Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 189. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge on the comic forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. I always get nervous when we try something new because I always wonder what horrible things the software is going to do. So says the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin and the Duke of You Know.
How's it going, eh?
Actually, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to a friend of the show and fellow podcaster, Daryl Taylor. He gave us some suggestions on how to do some Skype recordings using our Audacity software that we've already been using. I've never used Audacity. I've actually used programs that were specifically geared towards recording Skype. So I wanted to give him a shout out. Jim and I are doing a test run on this show, and so there's going to be a little tweaking throughout the episode as far as making adjustments and things like that, of just ways for us to be able to record when we're not together, and also to be able to record when we're with guests in an environment that's a little bit safer for recording. So this episode, it's going to be a little bit shorter. We released 188B if you missed it. It has JSA All-Stars number 1. I know with 188 I made a little bit of a goof up. It's the first time I've ever done that where we have the same segment in twice. So I did put the segment that was missed in 188B. So if you missed that, go ahead and listen to that. It's about a half an hour, a little over half an hour of a show. This one's going to be about 2 hours. Jim and I have an in-depth discussion about Detective Comics, which is a book that we have not been talking about on the show, and we both love. And we also talk about Superman's Secret Origins, which is another book that we haven't really had an in-depth discussion on the show in a while. So I really wanted to talk about both of those books. We're going to do episodes like this every so often, where we have the opportunity to just grab a couple of books we haven't been chatting about, and we've been doing it over the past couple months just to get them over there. So this one's a little bit shorter, but we wanted to get something out to you now. Our next episode is going to be a kind of a part 2 of this discussion. Daryl Taylor's joining us to discuss Batman, and we have a pretty in-depth Batman discussion planned. So that's why this one's a little bit shorter. We're trying to get that one underway and get back to Preacher and wrap up the month with a Green Lantern Blackest Night episode, because we want to get, we haven't discussed the last issue of Blackest Night yet. The new issue is going to be released at the end of this month, so we're going to discuss on that episode all of the stuff that's been released during this month in kind of a casual discussion, and talk about those 2 issues and kind of really tackle some of the events of Blackest Night as it ends out 2009. But we thought it was a good time to kind of go back and there's a couple more books that I know you and I want to talk about this month that we're going to try to get on another episode somewhere in there as well. So you and I got just a whole bunch of junk we want to talk about. I know Secret 6 is something that's coming this month. We have to talk about that Black Alice issue.
Must.
So that will be coming this month as well. Want to remind everyone about the Raging Oscars 2009. This year is going to be a little different. Rather than announcing formal categories, Jim and I are going to chat about and award our favorite creators, books, characters, moments, trends, and announcements of 2009. We want to shout out hopes and wishes for 2010, and we encourage you to do the same. This is going to be one of the first episodes of 2010. Please give you any of your thoughts about 2009, things that you think should be getting noticed that people aren't talking about. This can be from Vertigo, Wildstorm, the regular DC Universe proper. Please get them in by December 31st to senseiofwhatnot@gmail.com, or call our voicemail line at 1-440-388-4434 or drnorge at Skype. We would love to have your participation in this event. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. You can also hear us on Get Your Geek On Radio. GetYourGeekOnRadio.com, an online radio station committed to making geek chic. And Jim, comicsforsight.com, you got to see it when you were here last. I got my Aquaman page.
Ooh, it's beautiful work.
There's plenty of auctions still up there. There's also a chance for you to donate and a handy-dandy link on their site. This is helping John Ostrander. Anything over what they need to help John Ostrander is going to the Hero Initiative. So you are helping not only out that creator, but all that money will go back to helping comic creators if there's anything over from that. So please consider supporting that. I think it's very, very cool. Our sponsors for this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com, where you can pick up Superman's Secret Origin, number 5 of 6. Superman vs. Metallo for the first time. Witness the origin of one of Superman's most feared foes as an attack by Lex Luthor goes awry and gives birth to the evil of Metallo. Can an inexperienced Man of Steel handle a foe with a heart of kryptonite? Meanwhile, Lois Lane and Perry White are close to revealing Luthor as the monster that he is. But are they willing to pay for the truth with their lives? and it's regularly $3.99, 40% off, only $2.39, which is a great savings on that. Over at InStockTrades.com, we want to remind everyone to check out our next Rage of the Month, which is going to be in January. We're going to be joined by friend of the show, Kent Hare, to discuss JLA Avengers, the trade paperback. This is regularly $19.99, 47% off, only $10.59, 208 pages. Kurt Busiek, George Perez. Jim, we're going to be talking DC and Marvel on Raging Bullets in January. Good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really excited for that one. You have not read that yet, right?
No, I have not read it yet.
Yeah, that's a good one. That'll be a fun one to read. So that's InStockTrades.com for that, and DCBService.com for your pre-orders. Just two great sites, and we want to thank them for the continued support of the show. Jim, want to remind everyone to check out RagingBullets.com with listener-produced columns, Where's What Not Nows, DC release dates, show news, and more. We're always looking for submissions and participation. Our website's all about community, so if you guys have anything you want to get out there that's DC-related, or otherwise, actually, some of our columns, kind of skirt all kinds of geekdom. Send that to ragingbullets@gmail.com. I'm always looking for new ideas, and that enters you into our ongoing contest. That's how Kent Hare got picked, actually, for supporting us with sketches and work like that. So please consider participating. Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
Well, Sean, we are a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're reviewing. So if we're going over something you haven't read, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
All right, and we want to remind everyone that we're also chatting about some of the huge DC news this week. So there's a lot to discuss, and a quick little shout-out to Jonah Hex number 50. So really packed episode. For the fact that it's a little bit shorter than usual. We got a lot
keep laughing how you keep saying how this is a short episode. It's over 2 hours.
Yeah, but it's still shorter than usual for us, so it is interesting. Jim, one of the books that we haven't talked about is Batwoman. And one of the things we've been trying to do over the last couple months is really focus on some of the titles that we haven't had a chance to get to that we've really been enjoying. And Batwoman is definitely one of those books. It's when this Batman Reborn thing hit, I was really excited to learn about Kate Kane. I was really excited to get into her background, get into her head. I knew with Greg Rucka writing it that it was going to be a great title. I was going to be into it. I didn't expect how quickly. I figured the question, which has been great, but I figured the question was going to be the title, the part of this where I'm going to be like, okay, the question, I want to see the question totally in a solo series and everything like that. And that's true, but how much more my attachment has become to Kate Kane, to the point where she actually is the character that I'm more into right now. I love the question. The co-feature's excellent and all that, but Kate Kane is a character that whenever Bruce comes back and this whole thing, and there's going to be ultimately a shift, which, is expected from what Morrison was hinting at. It'll change Gotham quite a bit. It's very important to me now that Batwoman has her own series. Whether she remains the lead character of Detective Comics, which ultimately I would think it would be fantastic, or if there actually is a Batwoman title, there has to be one or the other. I would love to see the question a part of that. I think that these two in the same book together has been just incredible. But Batwoman right now, I am very Batwoman happy. This is a character who I really love, who I think is very cool. We talk about the need for more strong women in the DC universe, more characters to kind of take the spotlight. She's cool, very fast, and it's a character who I really like. Where are you at as far as Batwoman? Where are you at with this character?
Oh, dude, I'm echoing a lot of your sentiments, on just how cool and neat this book is and how much I'm really enjoying it. And it's not even just the cool stories we're getting. I got to tell you, I'm really digging the art styles because, it's the great, some really nice, beautiful artwork. But I liked how the art styles is kind of reflecting in the story. The last story arc, we had a little bit of a funky, freaky kind of story going. So the art style was switched around a little bit. The layout was not your quote unquote traditional comic book art style, but it had just a different, feel and taste to it. Well, now we're shifting to more of a traditional story. We're getting the background of her, and it's got a more traditional layout, and just but it's still that same art style. There's not like a jarring difference in the two. Where like, what is this, a new art team? No, it's obviously the same art team, but it's just the art is reflecting the story we're getting, and that's something that really I like seeing that. There's a lot of our favorite art teams out there are our favorite art teams because the art really goes hand in hand with the actual story being told. this is another one of those examples. We get some great, Ruka stories, and we get some beautiful Williams art here. I'm just really gushing about what I'm getting out of this. And for me, I can 100% say I would like to see Detective Comics remain a Batwoman title.
I would too.
You give Bruce Batman, you give Dick and Damian, Batman and Robin, and you keep Batwoman in Detective Comics. With the question backup, we got a solid story here, and it's something I'm really enjoying.
That would be interesting. I honestly, it will go on our next episode more into the whole Batman thing, because I think we have a lot of different opinions as far as where Batman's going to go, and where we'd like to see it go ultimately. But I would love to see her stay in Detective Comics. I think it's a great title. I think what's great about it is because it's Detective Comics, I think there's people who are collectors of Detective Comics who collected for years that are getting a great Batwoman story and really enjoying that. I think it's great exposure for the character, and I think to put her in that high-profile title is a good move, and I think to keep her there is a good move. I think you can easily keep... I'd like to see Batman and Robin remain a title and keep that going, and Streets of Gotham, remain a title, and Batman remain titles, and keep Detective with her. I think you're right. There's no reason why she has to switch. Jim, one of the things that I've really enjoyed is the exploration of her time at West Point, and how it would be hard for this character to make decisions as far as what is my code of honor, who am I as a person, and what does that mean? I know, in my job as a teacher, it's really important for me to keep a certain code of ethics, and you have to sit there and say to yourself, at what point in time, how honest are you going to be when your career is on the line, when everything you've worked for is on the line? And that's something I think it's a very honest thing that people face. And she's worked to be at West Point. This is something where it was a goal of hers. Obviously, you get from where everything that's going on, all of her circumstances and her time with the people there, that ring, she's beaming with that ring on her finger. This is incredibly important to her. It's an honorable moment for her. She's going to have to make a decision during this issue. What's more important to me? My honor, my integrity, and what this ring means, what it stands for, or having the ring itself. And there's a big distinction there. And it's one of the things that I really like about this character is she makes a decision that, in her position, I don't know if I could make. And I'm being honest with that, because you don't know until you're actually there, because it is a life-changing decision. And I love that. I ate this up.
Oh, yeah, big time. This was one of those moments that really got me into this title and this character, because I knew she had a military background. We know she's, lesbian, so that's going to come up. And just they're dealing with Don't Ask, Don't Tell was just wonderful, because, this is a very heated discussion and a very heated topic amongst military people, amongst civilian people, and it's one of those things where, personally, my personal opinion is if you want to serve this country, you should be allowed to. That's not the current rule of the law of the land, and I don't know if that will ever change anytime soon. But the fact that they did upfront and addressed it really had me going, because the code of honor that is at the West Point is, that's a military academy code, but it's also an officer's code. I do not lie, cheat, or steal. That's a code of conduct. That's a code of honor. And this type of stuff, we see it not just West Point. You see it at in Norwich, at VMI, at Annapolis, at the various ROTC programs that are producing future officers of the military. This is a very viable, very topical discussion, and I like seeing how they handled it, because as you said, it's a difficult question. What are you going to do? You're confronted with this. You either lie and say, no, I am not a homosexual, or you say, yes, I am, and you're now out of the military. And you look at this, she was the top of her class. She was the top cadet. She was not just getting into West Point is tough as is. You have to earn your spot there. But while you're there, West Point is still a good old boys network. The Army is still very much a good old boys network, where it is harder on female officers. So not only did she earn her way there, she worked hard and earned a higher, command spot at the academy. Now she has to step away from all of that. And that is something that just really impressed me, that they would bring this into the story. It really brought me closer to this character, just seeing what she was willing to give up for her code of honor. And it's, honor is, a big thing, into I don't even want to say just the military. It's a big thing into, a lifestyle. If you're a person of honor, you have to follow the code.
Well, she even says duty, honor, country. She even says duty, honor, country.
Yeah, that also is another, just basic fundamental line for all military officers: duty, honor, country. And that's actually, I was glad when they threw that in there as well, because these are all things that are ingrained in officers, ingrained in the cadets, ingrained in those who follow the path. And it's, I really dig seeing this from her.
I think what impressed me so much, though, is there's a big difference between saying you're going to follow a path and saying you believe in the path and actually doing it. That's what impressed me about her. She not only says that she believes in the code, she believes in the code. Huge difference. And I think that that's something that I found engaging about her. She doesn't just talk the talk, she walks the walk. And that's a cool thing about the character, because I think that is so much harder to do. I have nothing but respect for people who have a military discipline and they're able to go through it. But when it comes down to push comes to shove, and because this is something that is what she chose to do, is something that is embarrassing not only to her, but to her family. But to take that embarrassment over giving up your code, your sense of right, your sense of honor, your sense of who you are and what it means to be a part of that group, was something that just so impressed me about her. And I just thought that was neat. It wasn't that they threw her out because of that. She could have stayed. They would have let her if she had just said the quote-unquote the right thing. And instead, she chose to really say the actual right thing.
Right thing, yeah.
And the honest thing, and to stand by who she is and all that. And I found that so compelling about the whole piece. And I did love that, like, if you take a look at the cover credits, or the credits, that they give a special thanks to Lieutenant Daniel Choi, USMA 2003, for his generous assistance in research for this issue. It's cool that they went and did that background research and really tried to make this feel authentic, because it did work for me. I felt like I was being taken to a place that, for me, isn't very familiar, but I felt that I learned something in this issue for what that means, and it made her story feel that much more unique that background research was done. Because it visually is not only pleasing, but the setting, the mood, the tone, the dialogue all worked so well to give me a feeling of a place that isn't familiar for me. And I like that.
Yeah, and I like that the fact that they put Lieutenant Choi into the comic. Because if you look at one of the character who comes and gets her, his name tag is Choi. So they actually put him in the book, too. So that's kind of a cool little thing to do.
Especially considering what he put on, I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
The Cadet Honor Code. A cadet will not lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those who do. So throughout this book, these are things that are ingrained into these cadets, and we see her being faced with that. And the whole love affair, the relationship between the two, I really liked. As I was going through, I'm like, okay, I can see why these two like each other. I can see the support they provide for each other, just like you would in a male-female relationship. It was, I get it. And that was something that I thought was well written as well. It wasn't about sexy cheesecake at that moment. And I thought that was neat about the drawing. It just was that moment was the same kind of moment you'd get, for example, in a great Ollie Queen, Dinah Lance moment. It worked on that level, which you could have taken it to a level where it cheapened it, and it didn't. That was something that I found particularly interesting as well. It just happened to be two female characters. It felt very natural, very real, and I really appreciated that as well.
Yeah, that's the best kind of story when you're going to do a quote-unquote alternative lifestyle story, where it's not about, it's just about two people. And you can take this and apply any two people into it. And it's partially one of the things I really enjoy about the way they're writing her, the way she's coming across. She's not a lesbian superhero. She's a superhero who happens to be a lesbian. Yeah. And that is, a very just cool aspect of the character, and something I really dig about her as well, because this for me really is probably the strongest they've really ever brought in that part of her character into it. It's been the previous story arc that could have been any other female superhero in a costume. So they're not making every issue, every moment in the title about her, sexuality. It's about her being Batwoman and her going through the proper steps and just, she's got the training, she's got her team, she's got everything in place, and you see this true concept that she is Batwoman. And I like that. That's another thing that's really strong, for me about this book. And that's, once again, goes back to great writing by Greg Rucka. So this is something that I just really enjoy about this title and this character. And it's cool Batman action, but it's not, the same backstory that is Batman. It's a different person in the cape and cowl. It's a different person, but it's still that same type of Batman-esque feel to it. There's the reasons why she put on the cape and cowl. There's the reasons why she's doing what she's doing. And we're getting the background as to who she is and why she's there. And I'm glad they took, early into her run to explain this. They didn't make this the first story arc, because I like the fact that we were just thrown right into the story with her, right into the middle of the action, and let the action play out some of the stuff. Now we're going back and saying, this is who she is. This is who's under the mask.
An example of this not being sensationalized is I like that the relationships, both relationships, are very different, because we get to see the initial relationship with her and Renee Montoya in this when they first meet, and how those feel very different. And that was something to me that I found instantly engaging, that these two characters do not seem the same. There is something very different between the two of them, and that works for me. Because an alternative relationship should be just as diverse as, I've had no two relationships with girlfriends that have been the same. They've both felt very different, very unique, and that was something that worked for me. This sequence, though, where an allegation has been brought to me regarding your conduct, specifically that you're in violation of Article 125 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. I'm obligated to initiate any investigation into any potential violation of the UCMJ, as you know. Yes, sir. I have some discretion in this matter, however. You can tell me right now that this is a mistake, that it's a joke, that you were goofing around, that it's a simple misunderstanding, and it will never happen again. Tell me that, and you'll face disciplinary action. You'll lose the chance to be first captain next semester, but you'll still graduate, and you'll stay in the Army. What was interesting here is the value of who she is, because she's the top of the class, all that. He's sitting there and saying, I'm throwing you a bone here. We can make this work. I understand. You just need to tell me that this is the way it is, whether it's true or not. And he's basically telling her right now, I'm giving you a chance to tell me it's not true. I'm giving you a chance to make this work even though it shouldn't. We're going to do that. That moment shows the respect that he has for her, because he's willing to violate right there. Because I think, in my eyes, it's clear that he knows that this really happened. This wasn't a mistake. He's giving her the opportunity to do that, which that does show respect, friendship, and just saying, I wouldn't do this for everybody, but in your case, I'm willing to make an exception here. I love how she handles this. And because he says, I'm doing this because you're a damn fine cadet, because I believe you'll make a damn fine officer. I'm doing this because your father is as fine a soldier as I've ever met, and for the memory of your mother, about whom I can and do say the same. Yes, sir. May I ask you a question, sir? You may. Am I the only cadet facing this allegation? That's not relevant to this conversation, which means right now she's just found out that in her case, the other one in question is probably facing the same allegation and not being given the same choice. Is that how you read that?
Well, he does later say that at present you are the only cadet facing these allegations, yes. So for me, I kind of took it that she was thinking, okay, am I the only one being charged here? Will the other one go down if I say yes? Mm-hmm. And that's how I took it. That
so is it that
asked that.
Do you think they don't know who the other one is?
The other one, the charges haven't been brought up against the other one. Mm-hmm. And that's what she wanted to find out. If she says, if the other one was up against charges right now, she probably would have lied. Because that would get the other one off the, out of the fire. But the fact that she's by herself, she's the only one being charged, she can up front and say, hey, this is me.
A cadet.
That's how I read that whole sequence.
Okay. And that's it. I actually respect that even more. Because
big time.
There is an honor in the sense that, not just because the person's her lover, this is a fellow cadet. Am I going to ruin this person's life for my sense of honor? And that becomes an interesting distinction where she had to make that distinction right now. Now it's all on me. It's completely 100% my choice. And in this case, I've got to say, a cadet shall not lie, cheat, or steal, nor suffer others to do so. I'm sorry, sir, I can't. I'm gay. Puts down the ring. It was a powerful moment because it wasn't sensationalized, played out it looked very by the book. And I don't know how, I can't personally say whether I would know anything that looks like it's by the book, but I loved the visual presentation of this. It was interesting for that sequence to take place, then we're flashed into present day. And that was something I always appreciate when we do these origin stories, that we don't just completely jump out of current continuity and what's currently happening today. We do pull back in this stuff that's happened since Crime Bible with her, this whole concept of this prophecy that she, the twice named, needs to be killed. I was always taking it because her name was Kate Kane, but there's another dual meaning there. It's because there's a twin as well.
Yeah.
And now, do you take it as, according to the prophecy, that her twin needed to die?
See, that's where I was a little confused. I think that's what they were saying with her and just the daughter, well, the sister, and it wasn't exactly her that had to die. It's the other one who had to die, and that maybe the sister's death could have been from a long time ago and not even, been a relevant thing. So I don't know. It's one of those tough things, and I tell you, it's once again, we're talking about present day and how I said the art style was shifting. Mm-hmm. This is exactly what I was talking about, this 2-page spread. That it's dealing with some freaky, funky factors of the current Crime Bible and just shape-shifting and just monster humanoid type creatures.
Werewolves.
And werewolves, And once again, it's back to that, kind of non-traditional art layout. And I was just, go from the one page, then right to here. I was just like, damn, this is cool.
Well, I do love that because the art changes, the little boxes in the bat symbol are her in another location.
Yeah.
And it's really this werewolf who has been helping her, it's funny how prophecies work. And it is one of those things where people have to be careful whenever there's interpretation of religious documents or religious books. You can plug them in your own way. You can also dispute them in your own way. There's people who all the time are, pulling out things and saying this is a sign of the apocalypse and all that. Well, okay, I get that. I can see how you can fit that in there. But this, twice named Cain thing, where he's sitting here saying it had to be the truth, but it wasn't. Now, I also look at that and I'm like, well, but you could say that her twin being killed made the prophecy come true. Technically, if they were saying twice named meant twins instead of Kate Kane.
Right.
Where so I don't know. That becomes an interesting little. I think you can make those things work, and that's one of the things that I loved about how this prophecy was written. It's like any other religious document that it's where fanaticism comes into the whole thing. It's that you can make those things kind of work if you really try hard enough and you want them to. And it's kind of the scary thing about it as well, because that's why these groups will go to the lengths that they will as far as murdering and sacrificing and things like that. It's because they because they can find a way for it to fit that they believe that that's a sign that they need to take these further desperate actions. And I loved that about this story, because it does, you're right, really quick. It stays very realistic fiction up until this point where it gets very supernatural, and yet nothing gets lost. It seems to all fit and gel together. And that's an interesting how these jumps happen in this particular storytelling. And I loved how the flow worked in all this. And how gorgeous it looked all the way through.
Yeah, that's, I tell you, and it's funny because I do need to read through a couple times when we get this different style, because I get caught up in the artwork. I get caught up in the visual stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be reading right now.
But I don't think there's one way to read a comic book. I really don't. There's times I honestly, we've done this since we've been doing the show. As it's gone on more and more, we've told people, please do yourself a favor and reread your comics. If you only read them through once, you've got to go through and do it a second, even a third time, at least. to get that full impact of what's really being done there visually and through the dialogue, because there's so much detail you miss if you don't. You talk about how I need to do that because the art kind of captivates me and I kind of lose track. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. You're just drawn into the art at that moment, and it kind of it shifts your focus, and you need to go back and be able to focus on one thing. I'm the same way. It's just I'm able to keep my focus, and that's not saying this isn't a dispute of what you do. I'm able to keep my focus all the way through, but then because of so much going on in the artwork, I need to go back and take a look at the artwork to kind of delve into it. There's more than one, there's probably hundreds of ways to experience a comic book when you first read through, and that's just kind of a great example of where there's a reason to reread these things and to re-enjoy them. That's part of the value. If you only read a comic once, and it's a small, quick, isolated experience, with the amount we're paying for these things, you're really not getting the whole bang and pop that you should be.
And definitely. And I like the chicken dude that's in there. I'm kind of chuckling when I see, because you look at the werewolf, that's a cool thing. The tiger eye, that's a cool thing. The chicken dude, the turtle dude. I feel bad for those guys because, you're half a turtle. Okay, yeah, you got a cool shell on your back, but you're really not, do you really want to be turtle guy?
The girl that looks like the bug?
Yeah. Well, actually, I even give that mantis. A little bit of a coolness because she's got the two massive, I'm guessing a praying mantis kind of mixture there. So she's got something there, but And
then we got the snake dude who looks suitably creepy.
Oh, big time. That is a definite creep factor there.
Yeah. He looks very creepy, Uncle. Like you don't want to like he was a creep before all this happened. I love the visual styling of Batwoman. Like, she has a very unique look to her. Like, when she's in the back, during that sequence that you're talking about, you see her in the background there. There is something, her red, that crimson kind of color to her, is very striking. The coloring in this is very good. And it's a team that really, it has a nice style, this group working together on this one. The colors, it's Dave Stewart doing the colors on this one, and it's... It shows that this team just really gels well together. This is stuff that, honestly, we talk about a book that I would consider purchasing. I have so many for the artwork that I would consider repurchasing in a larger format. This is one I would love to see this put out in a larger format. I liked that we got to see some look into her family life, like, the family heirloom. That would be something that would be really difficult for anybody, I think, especially with the loss of a mother or a father, either way, to have that ring then pass. I got to question Dad's judgment a little bit on this little move. I can understand why Kate's a little ticked off.
Yeah, and it's not even just ticked off about Dad's judgment. The wife, the new wife kind of was like, well, it's kind of small, but sentimental value. I'm like, you know what? It's more to that ring than just the size of the rock. And I think that's part of her issues and her anger.
Yeah, when there's a true emotional value to the whole thing, when there's a true link to a family emotional value to something, it doesn't matter the size. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
This is Mom's ring. Especially, if it's honestly, if it is the issue of the size of the ring when you're taking a look at that, then Dad easily at this stage could probably afford to purchase another ring.
Yeah, but he went with the fact that this was he went the sentimental route. He went the romantic route. And, you listen to, you read what she was saying. She kind of, and it could very easily come across that she was like, hey, why can't you give me a bigger ring? And she later's like, oh, I love the ring, to Kate when she realizes Kate's there. It's like, hey, oh, no, and she doesn't want Kate to think it's about the money because Dad is doing very well for himself. You see the size of the house and whatnot. There's, multiple cars, and it's not just even cars, it's nice cars. So there's, money isn't an issue. Dad went the sentimental route, which I actually think is kind of interesting. And, considering your typical, stereotypical, military man, you're not always known to be the romantic love, the romantic fool. And the Dad's kind of doing that. And I also question whether he had this type of outwardly passion and romance with his his first wife, with Kate's mom, because that could also be a whole nother thing where the grown daughter sees the dad being all lovey-lovey to the new wife, that he wasn't that emotional with her mom.
I don't know that that's an issue here, because it is. I will say that this is interesting, because the stepmom, I do give her credit for how she handled this, because she sits there and when Robert, the visiting, guy, snooty guy, says she's got a lot of attitude, doesn't she? She does call him. She says Robert, basically trying to stop him from saying anything further, because obviously she wants there to be a relationship there. Whereas she could have played into it and started saying, oh, she's always like that, or something like that. You know what I mean? There could have been other responses there where it could have shown her. But, and Robert's wife even says when Dad's in the garage, doesn't he know you have a chauffeur? Just totally doesn't get the idea that Dad is a soldier. He's a hands-on guy. Whether or not he has the money or not is irrelevant there. In his case, to be able to work on this car is something that's therapeutic for him. And this is a moment. So I don't know that the stepmom is necessarily such a bad person, or that Dad is. It's just a bonehead move.
Right.
And that's, I don't think that Dad's a bad guy for doing this. And if there's a sentimental value to the ring for Dad, it would be because he loved Mom. So otherwise, there would be no sentimental value there. I just think I would have, if you have a kid in the equation, I mean, Kate's an adult, but I mean, it's still your daughter.
Yeah.
You think there would have been a little bit of sensitivity. They're saying, do you mind if I do that? Like, there should have been a convo that took place before that ring was given. Well, I would think.
I would say any jewelry that was previously worn by the mom, by default goes to Kate. And that's something he should have passed down to Kate, even if, granted, he didn't know of her lifestyle at this point in time, so he would think, hey, when she gets married, maybe her husband, would want to use the ring and stuff like that, or maybe her husband would have a family heirloom. But it's still the mom's jewelry does get passed down to the daughter.
If it was a family heirloom, let's go on this. Was it his wife that's where that started, or was it then his mother? Is it a family heirloom in the sense that, and that's not something that's revealed here, because it's a family heirloom apparently, meaning, where did that actually start? Because if it was his mother's ring, then there is a reason, that might be something for generations you pass it down to the wife, so maybe it would be appropriate in that sense, except that it was Mom's.
Right.
I don't know, because that I don't know if it goes beyond that. For right now, all we're seeing is that it was Mom's engagement ring, so that's where it becomes a little tricky. I do love the conversation between Dad.
Oh yeah, this has got to be one of those conversations where people just, oh crud, time for me to, it's got to be a difficult situation to deal with, especially, I don't want to make generalizations or stereotypes on, the military, the more alpha male masculine type of people, but this would be a hard pill for them to swallow. One coming, his daughter, who was top of the class, going to be one of the honor grads, for West Point, is now not only not in the military, but the reason she's not in the military is because she's gay. That have to be a tough pill for him to swallow. But I do like the fact that he backs her play on this. She's like, I couldn't say what they wanted me to say. And he's like, why? He's like, I would be lying. Uh-huh. And he immediately just, you got that one panel where he's thinking about what he's going to say, and then he's like, then you kept your honor. And I thought that was just a really hoorah moment. I really liked the Dad, and you could see where Kate gets her code of honor from.
I like the pause there, though, where she said I'd have been lying, and there's just Dad having that moment of pondering, like, how do I handle this? And I did like how he said, and see, this is where I think that there was obviously a good relationship with Mom. Then you kept your honor and integrity. I'm proud of you. Your mother would have been too. Somebody who didn't have that relationship with his wife wouldn't have brought that in. He would have kept it all about him. Right. He didn't. He brought her into it immediately, knowing that was the right thing to say, and I really liked that. I thought that was very well handled. This is really just a darn good book. and we see the wedding. It seems like she came around for the wedding, because you see her clapping in the background, but then we get to see where her life went after that. I wanted to serve, that's all I wanted, now that's gone, I've got nothing, showing that her life's kind of gone into a downward spiral until she met Renee. And even then, it's kind of a tragic relationship because when you're at that stage of your life where you don't know where you're heading or what your overall goal is or what your place is in the world, no matter how good the relationship is, no matter what that person can bring to the table for you, you aren't ready yet to take it to that next level. You aren't ready to be that partner that the other person needs. And we see that here with Kate and Renee, where she's saying just dumb things. I mean, I've been here before in my life. We all have. It's a very normal, natural thing. It's a relationship that could be good for you, but the timing's just not right. And I love those moments because they have these great conversations about Sergeant Bullock and how she's got to keep this secret. And, you know, Kate doesn't get that because Kate put it all on the line for her relationship. You know, for not even just for her relationship, she put it on her line to be able to be who she is out in the open. So she gave up her entire career path. She gave up what was most important to her to maintain her integrity, to maintain her honor. And Renee, on the other hand, I think that's more normal what Renee's going through. This is my career. It's my job. It's my life. I can't give that up for the sake of having this out in the open, and why can't you understand that? It's where the two of them come at a brick wall, where I get Renee's side of it, I get Kate's side of it. And I love that about this, because if I was the friend of the two of them, it would be so hard to give them advice here, because I can see both sides of it. And I don't know that one's more right than the other in how they feel. But I can see where it would cause what's probably a fantastic relationship to ultimately dissolve. It's that one point where I respect Kate and I respect Renee.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in the Gotham Central, you know, that series, they showed when Kate basically had to, you know, was kind of forced out of the closet. You know, and Renee. The stuff she was not Kate, I mean Renee, yeah. When she came out, you know, to the police department, and she had all that dealing she had to deal with. But you know, you look at it, just the fact that, you know, one of the things where you're saying, and you know, I do feel for both of them, but I'm actually really in this scenario, I'm kind of, because I know the full background, I'm leaning more towards Kate. Because she did, you know, give up her career. Okay. She did give up. And Renee...
hold on. On a scenario here, though. What if it was you?
On a scenario, what if it was me? It'd be tough. I'm not going to knock Renee for wanting to stay in the closet, you know, and not coming out. But in truth, she can be homosexual and a police officer. Yeah, she's going to get ribbing and she's going to get problems from the fellow officers, but she won't be fired for that fact. You know, Kate did get fired flat for one reason and one reason only, is because she was gay. And that is why I do lean more towards support on Kate. I understand what Renee's going through.
What's easier?
If I was in her shoes, I don't know if I could come out and I could say, hey, this is who I am.
This is where I see both sides of it. What would be harder, though? To live with it every day and continue to be at the job, or to be fired and walk away, or, you know, let go? To be fired and walked away, yes, you have to live with it and deal with it, but there's still that element that you're not dealing with those people every day. Dad supported her. She didn't have to deal with it was more of an internal, like, I had to give that up, that Kate had. And I respect 110% what Kate had to do, but on Renee's end of it, I'm like, okay, I remember reading Gotham Central. See, you didn't read what she went through in that. In Gotham Central, when she went through that, it was quite a bit of ribbing.
Yeah, and I read some time. I picked up. I have the Gotham Central trades.
Did you read all of it?
Well, I've read through when she came out and all that. Right. I'm getting the hardcover trades, so I've stopped buying the softcover trades.
But I'm saying that went on for quite some time. It was very hard for her to deal with, and so I mean, I guess I can, and I think it maybe been because I read Renee's first and then coming to read this. I see both sides of it.
I do see both sides,
and I agree with you on what you're. I agree with you on what you're saying about Kate. I guess
if to use your analogy before, if I was their friend, I would be sympathetic for both of them, but I probably would be on Kate's side more, and I would probably be saying to Renee, "Hey, you know, she gave up her life for that. You know, she gave up everything she wanted to be because of this job. If you were to come out, you wouldn't be fired. She was fired.
Kate didn't give it up for a relationship, though.
Kate gave it up for the truth.
Right. But that's just it. Like, Kate's asking her to give it up, I mean, and basically putting Renee in a position where Renee has to give it up for her, not for herself. There's a huge difference there. Kate gave it up for herself because that's what Kate wanted. It wasn't a situation where she was being pressured into doing it by the other person. She made that decision on her own. And when I say the other person she was dating. Yes, the military put her in the position where she had to say something, but she was being given an out there too. Like, her superior officer was basically telling her, if you say this, you can stay. All you got to do is say this and you can stay. So she was not being put into the pressure as far as in the sense of her lover making her do this. Kate, as the lover, is putting the pressure on Renee. The situation here is very different. It's not Renee having the choice. Like, Renee's not being confronted at this point by her superior officer. She's being confronted by Kate. It's a very different scenario. Her lover is not supporting her. Her lover's pushing her to do what she did in a situation that isn't the same. Renee's superior officer has not come to her and put her on the spot where Kate was. It wasn't like Kate started out the military by saying, hey, I'm gay, everybody, whoo-hoo, let me come to you and do that. She's telling Renee that Renee needs to go and do that. Kate only revealed it because she was found out. Kate didn't go and choose to do that and say, hey, I'm going to tell you what's gay. Guess what's going on with me? Guess what I did on Friday night? That's not the way it went down. She wants Renee to do that. So I side with Renee on this one. Because Kate is not presenting the same scenario to Renee.
I can actually... It is a different scenario. I agree with what you're saying. It just, I don't know. I think I associate more with Kate, just for some reason. And it's something I can't really even... I'm not even going to sit here and say she's right and wrong. I'm not going to say right or wrong. This is just where I stand. And on one hand, I can completely understand that, this is, at the beginning of a relationship. And really, one of the big things I always have problems with in relationships is when the other tries to change you to fit what they think. So that's a negative slot against Kate, because Kate is trying to, to change and or manipulate Renee into how she thinks Renee should act. Renee should be out in the open and be public about it, and Renee's not comfortable with that position. So I completely understand what you're saying. It's just for some reason I'm kind of siding with Kate.
Yeah, but you got to understand, Kate's saying that, but she was not. She got caught, and that's what forced her hand. So Renee's not in a position where she was caught. Kate's saying, you should deliberately get caught. You should do this. There's a huge difference. And there's a distinction there, and it's a double standard. Kate was keeping it in secret until she was busted, which is all that Renee's doing. Renee has not been busted on this. So there is a distinction there, which I think is, and honestly, it's a testament to the writing in this that it's so real that you and I are having a emotional, passionate debate over this, because of the fact that we actually care about both of these characters when we're reading it. But I'm saying Kate's got a double standard she's running here, and I love that because it reads very real. Because Kate did not just come out, like Kate did not approach her superior officer and say, hey, I need to tell you something. The superior officer called her in, and she was put under that position. She wants Renee to just say, hey, come on, just be out in the open about it. Let's go ahead and do this. And that wasn't totally what happened with Kate. So it is a different scenario, and I don't think she's being fair on Renee there.
And if you look at later on, when she's like calling when she's calling Renee on the phone outside of Marley's bar, she does kind of like, hey, I'm so sorry, and so maybe, to be honest, it could have been just like an emotional fire, just that, because that's something I don't think Kate really ever dealt with. No. The fact that she's lost she's lost who she was. She was a soldier. And it's hard to have this huge plan that she's got laid out, that she knows this is what I want to be, this is who I am, hoorah, this is my code, and now it's all gone and it's all changed, and she's now found somebody that she cares about, and I think this was just a displacement of anger. She's really, Kate was really angry at herself or angry at her circumstance and just lashed out at Renee. And you can see her trying to reach out to Renee saying, hey, let's talk about this.
But here's what Renee would be giving up, because we're saying that she'd keep the job. But look at the issues of Gotham Central that you read before that, and the respect that Renee gets from the other police officers. You're giving up then the respect, because we've talked many times on the show about police officers and how they need to trust each other, how they need to be there for each other, how there needs to be a respect and a trust that your partner's got your back and things like that. What happens when all that changes because this has come out in the open? So she does have a lot on the line to give up by coming out on this. And I don't think anybody should ever be forced to come out. They should make that choice because it's the right thing. What Kate did was incredibly brave. I loved how that was written because it read very natural. And I'm like, it was a hoorah moment, and I'm totally behind her. You and I emotionally, as far as what Kate did, you and I are completely on the same page. She's trying to force Renee in a way, though, that she was not. So she's really trying to make Renee do something that she never actually had to go through. What she went through is on a different level, in a different position, where she was given no choice, so she had to, cards on the table, make that decision at that point. And if Renee's superior officer came to her and said to her, hey, I've seen this or heard this about you, and then Renee lied about it, then Kate would have every right to come out and say, I was in that position and I didn't. But Bullock, let's go with Sergeant Bullock. This is her partner, Sergeant Bullock. Bullock hasn't confronted her on this where she's lying about it. She just hasn't said anything, which is the way Kate was prior to that situation as well. Kate just didn't say anything. So that's what I'm saying. And I do like, and I agree with you, in the next page, Kate does apologize and does try to smooth things over. But I do think that Kate's not in that place, and I think you're hitting the nail on the head right here. Kate emotionally has not dealt with this.
Yeah, and this is
that's where their relationships do. I think that's what I was going back to in the beginning when I was originally talking about how this was a doomed relationship. Kate emotionally has not gotten herself to a place where she knows who she is and what her place is in the world, to where she can be understanding of Renee when Renee needs her to be. And vice versa. I don't think Renee was at a place here where she could be what Kate needs her to be. They both were it's a tragic relationship because I think we're emotionally tied in this because we're like, boy, it would have been a cool relationship.
Especially, where each of them goes to. This is something where you would have, we always talk about with Batman and his partners, knowing the secret and not knowing the secret. These are two who would know each other's secrets, who would actually be good with it and understanding over it. So the craziness that is a crime fighter, would be an acceptable thing. So it's kind of interesting to see the fact that, because we never knew before when it broke down, when it fell apart. And I did like the sequencing, as we said, with her doing the apology, and then it goes right into combat mode. Right. And I thought that was a cool just part of it, because she's like, you think I'm some victim? I'm not a victim. I'm a soldier. And she just throws down, and it's training instinct and just general, therapeutic, venting for her as she's beating up this thug.
And it is interesting how I can't help but wonder if she doesn't see Batman's world as another opportunity to be a soldier fighting against crime. She looks at that and sees a different way to... I'm very curious to see where this goes, because she sees the symbol in the sky, sees him going off, and has she found now another army, or another, army's not a fair word to throw, another military group, another... So that same kind of goal, something.
She's found another core. She's found another. She's found a cause and a purpose. She's found that she can be a vigilante. She can be a hero. She can be somebody. It's. Honor isn't taken away just because she took off the uniform. Honor is something that is you, and it's ingrained into your body and your mind, body, and soul. Now she's saying, okay, here's my new uniform. Yeah. Here's my new army. This is my new corps. This is my new, me. And you definitely see the look in her face when, Batman's there. And it was even just her dialogue to the thug. I'm not a victim. I'm a soldier. She's going to stand up to the crime. She's going to stand up to the darkness and say, guess what? I'm not backing down. I'm not going to run from you. And I'm really looking forward to the next issue because I'm betting the next issue is going to be more of her developing the Batwoman, her developing who she is. I could see her actually doing some of the stuff like Bruce did, where she doesn't immediately adopt the mantle of the Bat. But, maybe just, thug beating, because those earlier stories, how Bruce, before he became Batman, he was just a guy, on the streets and whatnot. So I'd like to wonder if she's going to try something like that, or if she jumps right into the Bat, or I want to see that, develop and play out.
It is funny, because that's something that, again, came when Miller did Year One. A lot of that on the street stuff. So that is stuff that wasn't always in the mythos. in the original storytelling, the original version of it, if you look at the chronicles and stuff like that, he became Batman rather quickly. And over time, the training and all that got added on as far as that went. Writers expanded upon his origin and developed it a little bit more. So it is interesting to see how that character has grown over time. Kate is wonderful. I love this character. This has been just a phenomenal book visually. The Question, we've got to talk about that, the backup features. Very different art style with Cully Hamner. It's a little bit more gritty. Colorist Dave McCaig. Down to street level in kind of the look. I love Renee as the Question. Now, you didn't read any of... you've gotten the trades, I know, of the previous Question series. Have you read any Vic Sage other than 52?
Yeah, I've read some.
Okay. I read all of that, so to see... It was a hard transition to see somebody else in the Question guise. I am curious to see what that Blackest Night Question issue is going to be like. To see Denny O'Neil and Greg Rucka writing both of them.
Yeah, it's funny because I saw the birth of Renee as the Question, and I thought that was kind of a cool thing. And just with the whole who is this Vic guy, I'm like, But as that series went on, I got into him as well. So that's when I picked up the trades. But for me, one of the things I like about this is, you said it's a different art style. It's a little bit grittier, but there's a lot of remnants to some of the vigilante stuff where they'll use the coloring, just as the mood setting. Mm-hmm. And this is another very visually pleasing book, but I'm really liking just who Renee is. When they announced that she was going to be the backup feature of this, I immediately assumed in my head there'd be a lot of interaction between the two, like we have with Green Lantern and Black Canary.
Or Green Arrow.
What did I say?
Green Lantern.
You know what I mean. Well, this just announced, on the Whatnot source that
it's going to be Green Lantern and
a change up.
Yeah.
It's going to be Dinah and Hal are going to get together.
Okay.
So,
wouldn't that make things fun? I'm glad that Tott's still in this.
Yeah.
Because he was such a great part of Vic's book. And to see that connection still, that he is still being the advisor, he is still helping her out, he's the confidant. And I love that no matter what they're doing, she's still training. Like, when they're in the Outer Banks of North Carolina and he's feeding her information, she isn't just standing there listening. She's stretching, she's training, she's working out, practicing her balance. This is all training that she got through her time with Vic and then with Tott, where she had to then take those steps to become this more highly trained martial artists. And that would be something where no matter what you're doing, you have to sneak in training time because she's constantly on the go.
And you also think about it just when she's on the move and she's in, her fighting style is the stick and move. So she's got to be able to multitask. It's kind of like a Dick Grayson type of fighting style. And it works for her, and you see her do the scramble fighting, and so it would make sense that while she's training, she has to do the multitasking as well, because you can't just, if you only train where you're just focusing on what you're training, it's not going to relate well to field training. There's a difference between shooting at the range or shooting on a live fire exercise, or a difference between target shooting and hunting. You gotta do a little bit of both. You have to have your training sequencing to be like what your actual real life combat situation is, and it's a nice little just kind of throw off, really, but it's not. When you look on the surface, it's okay, yeah, it's kind of neat, but when you start getting deeper into it, it fits what she's doing, how she's doing her thing along with that. I expect stuff like this from the Bat family as well. When you see their training, it's not just straight training. It's the banter back and forth, the dialogue, changing up, improvise, adapt, and overcome type stuff. You need that when you're a hero without the meta powers. She has no meta powers. She is only herself. She only has her training and what she's done, in the past, present, and future to determine who is the Question.
It's also making the best use of the time, though. When you compare the Bat family, for example, they're either working or sleeping. So any time that they have in between is the only time they have to train. Because of how much they're on at nighttime, they have to sleep. They have to make some sort of semblance of a alter ego life. So there isn't a lot of time to sneak that in. Renee would run into the same problem just in the sense that she's always on the go. Doesn't seem to be a whole lot of focus on being Renee Montoya at this point. There seems to be a lot of focus on being the Question. So it is interesting to see. I wonder if she does even have or have the need to have an alter ego, or how is that working out for her? I'd love to see more development of that. Like where does her funding come from? How is she able to keep moving? Where does that all come from for her? And
yeah, I don't think there is a alter ego, Renee Montoya. And I thought there was something with Vic had some stuff set up, for kind of like a trust fund type thing.
Except Vic was a newscaster.
Okay.
In his previous, I'm wondering how much money is actually there, or if Tot's involved in that. I'm sure you're right to a certain extent that I'm sure that there is money, finances coming from somewhere, but I would love to see some more of that. I'm not saying that that's necessarily, I don't know that it would be appropriate in this story, because I love the way the stories, I love that we're seeing her investigation into all of this interspersed with how she found out about it, because you've got only a certain number of pages to fill in some of the story, so they're multitasking even in the storytelling, and it's working very well. Because we get to see her saying, I might need a little backup on this one, because she's dealing with organized crime. She's dealing with trafficking. That includes human trafficking, but not limited to that. Drugs, guns, and these cars, expensive sports cars, big-time money, and big-time people involved in that. They can't have her destroying their world, so who gets called in this whole thing? Huntress.
Dude, that was sweet. I really digged when they were going back and forth, and it was a little bit of humor in there. That's 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 all, and they're just going back and forth trying to take down who gets to take out the most guys. And I thought that, it wasn't a slapstick funny moment, but it was still just a little funny moment. It was these people who, they both were well over what they're dealing with. They definitely weren't, they're dealing with hired thugs. And there's a level of what a thug can do. These weren't specialists, these weren't professionals, these were just your grunts on the field. So they knew, hey, we can take these guys down. They're nothing but it's still, as long as they play by their game. They got to keep, it's the same stick and maneuver, use the shadows, fight from the thing. They weren't jumping right in the middle of them and beating them up, because they would have got it handed to them. But, just that little stick and move percentage, and it's kind of like the operation, the guerrilla warfare, if you will.
I'm still getting used to I love Cully Hammer's art. I enjoyed it when he was on There was a great run of Daredevil that he was involved with that was absolutely spectacular. And I loved it here on The Question. I'm getting used to his Huntress. I'm not quite there yet, because the Huntress, there's a variation on his Huntress to how I'm used to seeing Huntress. I love The Question. I love all of the other characters in there. Tot, everything about it. The only one that I'm still trying to wrap my head around his version of the Huntress. But I think the art style, and like you said about the coloring, is absolutely spectacular. That'd be my one small little gripe. But otherwise,
and it's definitely a completely different. It is a different look, but it's enough of it that we know who she is.
Oh yeah. So I wasn't saying it I love the art, so I'm not complaining on that end. That was just my one area where I'm kind of because the Huntress is one of those characters that I'm pretty picky about.
Yeah,
and we'll talk more about her on our next episode when we talk about the Batman issue where she recently appeared and what that character means. Now, we go to Gibraltar and we get to see... this is one of the great things. I think as the co-features have gone on, these second features, we've seen them get a better grasp of how to end them and how to keep a kind of a flow going there, because we're left with a nice little cliffhanger that we've now called in a specialist who isn't worried at all about dealing with the Question and Huntress. He's looking at this as a challenge. He's got the creepy-looking eyes, and I'm anxious to see...
Yeah, that is a little bit beyond creepy, what they're doing with the eyes. And I'm like, what? I'm trying to figure out what the purpose of him having his eyes forced open so that he can never blink.
Right. But there's got to be a reason behind it, and I've got a funny feeling it'll have to do with some sort of edge that he has that will come into play. I'm anxious to see what that character's all about. It's a great book. It's just a great, great book. And this is, to me, Detective Comics is very much a flagship title right now. And it's one that I kind of like this concept of it being a two-character book where you have the option to throw Renee into the front, you have the option to put Batwoman into the back. You can kind of play off of these characters, and that to me, it just works. I think it's the spot where they need to be, because I love seeing Batwoman in Detective Comics. I mean, the covers look great. The whole 7 years ago, we didn't really talk much about the cover. This whole series, one of the nice things has been these covers have just been stunning. And
oh yeah, big time. Just some really beautiful work here.
So good book.
Carter Hall, scientific genius from a far-off world, flies into action as Hawkman.
Jim, this was a crazy week for DC Universe news. I think it's because we're getting so close to the end of the year, they want to get people all excited for 2010. And I've already been excited for 2010, but I had no idea. Like, we knew that there was a big Superman event coming. Well, Free Comic Book Day is going to be kicking off with the free issue. It's going to be James Robinson, Eddie Barrows, and a cover by J.G. Jones, The War of the Supermen. Superman has left Earth in the hands of Nightwing, Flameward, Mon-El, and Guardian. The tensions between Earth and New Krypton are slowly rising. The winds of war are stirring. So this is going to be interesting. This is going, choosing of sides and things like that. So it's interesting. And we see that Mark Guggenheim, who previously was writing The Flash, is now going to be and the co-writer of the current Green Lantern movie, is going to be taking over Action Comics. So I'm hoping Rucka is involved on some level on where Superman goes from here, because Greg Rucka's been fabulous on Action Comics. So to not have him involved in the Superman books, or they've got a plan for him, because I love him obviously on Batwoman, and more Greg Rucka is always a good thing.
Yes, and it's the whole War of the Superman thing had me kind of like really excited, because I'm Superman happy right now. I heard the change in action. It's whenever there's a change, and it's whenever there's a change from a creative team that I really like, I do get a little bit worried. But I've liked some of his stuff. I've liked some of the Flash stuff he did. So I was like, okay, I'm going to see what we get with Action Comics. We know Action has a very good editorial type staff where there's a lot of stuff in conjunction with each other, because we've already seen that. I'm assuming that's not going to change. So it's one of those, I'm looking forward to seeing what we're going to get out of this.
Well, his Flash issue, you got to remember, he came in on the Flash run towards the tail end of Bart's run. Right. And those issues were pretty critically acclaimed. I think it was too little too late at that point, the decision. And he basically came in to close out that run. So it'd be interesting to see him actually have an opportunity to go into something big like this at the DC end. Because, he's been doing Spider-Man previously over on the Marvel end, so I'd be curious to see what he does here with this particular book. Green Arrow, the Green Arrow news.
Yes, big time.
There's going to be a Justice League Rise and Fall #1, which is going to kind of bridge the gap between Cry for Justice and the series where the new team has been launched. But then there's a Justice League The Rise of Arsenal 4-issue limited series. And these are all written by J.T. Krull, who's also going to be writing a 6-part The Fall of Green Arrow story in the Green Arrow book. And it's wow with what's going on with, so I'm curious if we're going to see Roy Harper becoming Arsenal again. Yeah, because it says the Rise of Arsenal, so I'm guessing no more Red Arrow.
Red Arrow looks like he's gone and done now. And, I'm assuming we're going to get a cybernetic arm for Roy, and maybe that even will have weaponry in the arm itself. Because you look at Cyborg, he's best buds with Cyborg. I couldn't see Cyborg not sharing with with Roy, what he can do. So that it may no longer even be bow and arrow anymore. It may be energy blast, gun blast. Who knows what we're going to get out of Roy? I'd like to still see the Archer, because I think that's kind of cool. I've always liked the bow and arrow stuff, but there may be more to this.
Arsenal, though, did use multiple weapons. There was a bow and arrow component at times, but Arsenal, the name Arsenal came from the fact that he used multiple weapons. So, that was his MO. So it's not, for Roy, it's not unheard of. He's been there, done that. So that'll be interesting to see. We're kind of going back to what he previously did, him adapting to stay in the game. So I think that's cool. J.T. Krull, I'm excited to be writing this, though, because his Titan stuff has been spectacular.
Yeah, he really lays it out, and it's been some good stuff coming from him. So definitely, in seeing him have all of these different pieces together, really has me excited for this, because it's not just going to be one bit here, one bit here. It's a lot of different stories that are going to be interconnected, maybe not technically interconnected, but it is affecting the same characters. So if you have the same writing staff on it, you're probably going to get very similar meshing stories that are going to come through. I like that action. I like them going with that, because one of the things that one of the common complaints that you can have is, well, this character seems different here than he does here. We got the same writer now. We're going to get the same character. We're going to get the same vibe from them.
Then we've got Legacies coming out, a 7-part miniseries kicking off in May, and each issue is going to spotlight a different era in the DC Universe, kind of the legacies there. And then there's the history of the DC Universe that's going to be relaunching, which is another big series. And
Jumpin' Jalopies, Norge. This should be really neato.
Who's Who? Well, Legacies is the history of the DC Universe, I'm guessing. That's 7 Jumping Jalopies. Oh. Legacies and History, I'm sorry, is the same series. So that's Legacies is the brand new History of the DC Universe series. That's a 7-part series. The old History of the DC Universe was a prestige format series that was done by Marv Wolfman and George Perez. I remember that one, and I really liked that. This is going to be great to see another series where through 7 issues, each one's going to have a different era. I wonder, though, talking about what you're saying, and I know where you're getting with your joke there, I wonder how they're going to address, because I like the idea that they're going from the Golden Age straight on through the Silver Age. It's going to be interesting to see if they show how those changing times have affected the universe.
Yeah, all kidding, that's what I was really kind of joking around about, but I am excited to see that, just to see, because there is that definite character, person, just the comic book code itself made had the writers change how they were doing stuff, and how they appeared back then as they do now, and it'll be interesting to see how this is addressed. This is one of those where I really am looking forward to getting this, just because I am not as familiar and or I'd say even comfortable with the earlier stuff. I want to see how this plays out. I'm a current age comic guy, so to get this past stuff, I'm curious about this. I want to see how they're going to portray it, how they're going to explain it, and is it going to be just a story format? Is it going to be story plus also kind of
Did you see the pages?
Yeah.
Well, then it's story format.
Yeah, but I don't know if the pages I saw, it's not like I saw everything. No. I don't know if there's going to be bits here, then more of a kind of like an explanation than some bits, or is it just going to be pure story?
With how much they were talking about the Joe and Andy Kubert art on the first issue, I'm guessing that it's going to be all story format. Because that stuff with the Crimson Avenger on the preview pages on the Source is just spectacular looking. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of the Golden Age stuff, so to see that stuff kind of brought into all this, and then a 12-issue Who's Who series.
Yes.
Another one of those to kind of update us. This is great because they're really tightening up questions that fans have been asking as far as what is in continuity, what is not. And those are those questions that are going to be answered now. And I'm assuming we're going to get some explanation in there on some of the multiverse as well. As far as what's known already. I'm not saying they're going to give us any shocking reveals to the new things, but I think we're going to probably get some explanation on some of those other planets, because the old Who's Who did that. So
yeah,
I'd love to
the
see
multiverse,
some of that.
So.
Yeah. Then in the Batman news, the return of Bruce Wayne. And to see that we're going to get through Batman through, it's a 6-part series, and this is going to really explain to us what Bruce has been going through. Each issue is going to be, it's Chris Sprouse handling the first issue, the second issue by Fraser Irving. Andy Kubert is going to be doing some character designs on the series that were shown on the Source, where we got to see the Pirate Batman and the Caveman Batman. Yeah, it's really good-looking stuff to kind of see these different eras, and that each artist, it makes sense to have a different artist on each issue because there's going to be exploring a different era that the guy's living through. We're going to get to see firsthand what the Omega Sanction is like. What is it like to be someone going through these different lives? Bruce apparently has some amnesia, so he doesn't know, but yet there is that deep-rooted core of him that is drawn to the Bat. And you just see in all instances the Bat.
It should be, I'm actually really, this is another one I'm looking forward to. It's, when you first started just thinking about the return of Bruce Wayne, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I was looking forward to it, but I wasn't excited. But just seeing the actual Omega Sanction, seeing what happens when this goes through, and just how he's going to be affected by it. I'm kind of curious about it. We're both fans of the time travel shows, and we're fans of that type of stuff. So to me, this is kind of like a, Batman, this is, in a way, this is, bringing back the Elseworld type stuff, but it's not even an Elseworld. It's in continuity. It's Bruce Wayne through these different eras. And I'm kind of curious if there is going to be any chance of him running in with his ancestors. Maybe he runs into eventually the earlier version of the Waynes even, and just kind of curious to see where this is going to go through.
Will he be those ancestors?
Say again?
Or could he possibly be those ancestors? I don't think we understand completely what's happening to him. But it would be interesting to see if maybe eventually he gets to run into his dad. If it comes, how close it comes to present day. In the sense that he runs into his dad as a younger man or something like that, and gets to, I don't know. What will he be doing? I'm so open-minded to where that's going to go. My personal favorite news this week was the announcement of Earth 1 being an ongoing series of graphic novels. Because at the end of Trinity, we saw that this Earth was formed. And we got to, that was part of the point of the series. I had no idea it would go into this, though. Superman Earth 1 and Batman Earth 1. Superman Earth 1 written by J. Michael Straczynski with art by Shane Davis, and Batman Earth 1 from Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. And,
wow.
Dude,
you had me at hello on that one with both of them. I especially like the idea of Johns writing Batman, because that's something, I've always wanted to see him do that. Gail Simone, I'd love to see her deal with the bats. There's some writers who don't normally get a chance to deal with these characters that I'd like to see their take on it, their interpretation, their dealings with it. So this is definitely a really exciting thing. This is not only his dealings with Batman, it's a different Earth, so he can twist some in, tweak some stuff around, and not have an issue with it.
Right. But also, the kind of storytelling you can do, one of the things we've noticed with the second features, for example, it changes the way you tell a story, because you need to make sure that you have kind of a hook at the end to the next part. So I've enjoyed seeing that different kind of variation to it. And we saw different things with Wednesday's Comics, with the way that was published in the one-page format, how that changed storytelling. How is being able to do a larger graphic novel going to change the approach of how you do a Superman and a Batman Earth 1 series? And what that is overall going to look like. I'm so excited these are going to be ongoings. I'm going to be curious to see what the publishing schedule looks like for these particular books. Are they going to be quarterly? Are we going to get a couple a year? Are we going to get, how often are we going to get these? I'm excited as can be, because
let's make it a weekly.
Yeah, but I mean it is obviously going to be published in a different timeline. I'm assuming we're going to get anywhere from 2 to 4 a year, and I'm sure they've probably got that all laid out. I didn't see anything in the announcements about what that publishing looks like. But I'm going to be excited to see, even if it's once a year, just to see that big graphic novel format put out with fresh original stories. I was a big fan of Ultimate Spider-Man. I still am, but I'm reading that one in trades now because of the show that we do. But when that originally came out, I was reading it monthly, and I was glued to it because it was fresh, it was exciting, it was different. It wasn't a knock on the current continuity Spider-Man, and I don't want to see this replace the current continuity Batman. Same way I didn't want that to replace the current continuity Spider-Man. But it was great to see just a fresh pair of eyes taking a look at the whole Batman mythos without contradicting what's currently going on now. And that's one of the multiverse that's always been the key to it, is that you can do stuff like this, and yet it has the possibility that Batman could meet Batman at some point. I don't necessarily I'm not in a mad dash rush for that, but I always liked that concept that even if they never meet, that is going on in our overall big scheme of things. These events will matter in Earth 1. Because they're actually taking place on an Earth that is within the greater DC multiverse. So it is kind of cool that those things are going to be happening, and I want to see what those books look like. Honestly, from the point of the concept to have it without the continuity baggage for newer readers and for, obviously the trade format and things like that, it would make sense that you wouldn't push to rush to have them meet, or even necessarily need to have them meet, because you want to keep that fresh and open for...
Right.
The audience. So it's cool. I'm excited for that. It's just a big week of news to end off 2009. Just to kind of say, hey,
the year's going out with a bang, man. And it's really just laying down the line for 2010. So really excited, looking forward to what we're going to get with next year, because you think about it, just with everything Blackest Night and New Krypton and all these, the cool stuff going on in Wonder Woman, and just, the all the green stuff going on. It's how do you keep building and building and building, and they're doing it. They're really just going to say, okay, you think you've got some awesome stuff going on, just wait, we're not done yet.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great way to bring in readers. Provide different opportunities. It was Gary Frank had mentioned in one of the interviews that he'd rather see comics go this way than going digital. And I'm with him to a certain extent, because I agree that comics, in order to keep attention, they need to keep coming up with fresh ideas, trying new things. Wednesday's Comics was a great example of where you're going to get notice by people because you're doing something fresh and different that people are going to get excited about. This is another way of doing something fresh and different. I never have looked at digital myself as being a replacement for anything paper. I've looked as digital as just being another output, another way to get that out to a different, fresh audience, versus it being a replacement for doing innovative things like this. Innovation in comics is, to me, you're going to generate notice just by being innovative. So it is interesting to see where comics are going to be heading to just keep people talking about them and reaching a larger audience, because they're cool. I mean, there's a reason why different media sources are, movies and video games and television shows are going to comics for ideas. It's because there's some great things going on there, and I love it. It's an exciting time to be a fan of this stuff, because every announcement makes you wonder, okay, what am I going to be buying next? That's cool. But that's the way it should be.
Yeah, my wallet is weeping a little bit, but you know what? I'm like, shut up, deal with it.
Well, and here's the thing. Your wallet may be weeping, but the great thing is, you're eventually, everybody has a breaking point on their budget. Whether it's a small one or a larger one, it doesn't matter. You have a breaking point. But to me, that breaking point is a lot easier to deal with when you have great choices to make. So to me, it's almost crazy. If you're not enjoying something you're reading right now, this is like a golden age of, then switch it up a little bit. You know what I mean? There's so much product out there that, one of the reasons why we do this show is just to kind of tell you what we're enjoying and why so many of these different titles are cool to us. So maybe if you're not digging something that, like we talked about last week, for example, maybe this week, Batwoman might be in Detective Comics, for example. Might be a title you want to try if you haven't been reading it. Or we're going to talk about Superman's Secret Origin. If you missed that mini, we're going to tell you why in the next segment, why you should be reading that. There's all kinds of comics out there that are great to read. So if you're not digging something, we don't all have to agree on what is our top 5 list, or what is our top list of comics. Try something new, and support another product that maybe is the one you've been looking for all along. So there's a lot of cool things to try. I also want to shout out Jonah Hex, issue 50. I'm going to do I know you're not reading it monthly. So the 50th issue came out, and for anybody that's not reading Jonah Hex, it's a great jumping on issue. It's a single self-contained issue with art by Darwin Cook. So if you're not reading the book, you don't have to feel like, geez, I'm going to not be a part of the storyline. It's a done-in-one issue. It's a great oversized issue where you get an incredibly cool Western story. And the artwork, like I said, Darwin Cook, but Gray and Palmiotti just really understand how to do a Western story that makes you go, hell yeah. And I wanted to do a quick shout out of Jonah Hex number 50 because I really, really enjoyed that issue. It comes off of the 6-part storyline that was running before it, which was also phenomenal. But this is just a great issue for anybody. If you haven't read Jonah Hex, pick up issue 50. It's a great way to see if it's a book for you and just get a good story. And if it's not your book, at least you've got a great single done-in-one story that you can, feel like, okay, I got something complete for my purchase. So if you've been trying to say, hey, should I be picking up Jonah Hex or not? It's a great issue to go ahead and grab it. So I wanted to shout that one out as something for people who are looking for a different sort of book. And 50 issues of Jonah Hex already. I didn't realize it was coming because I've been reading it monthly, just enjoying it. So I don't always pay attention to the issue numbers unless I'm trying to figure out what order to read. If I've got a stockpile of a couple of books, I'll look at the issue numbers to make sure I'm reading them in order. But other than that, I don't pay a whole bunch of attention. But 50 of Jonah, that's great. It's just a cool series. You're reading that one in trade, correct, Jim?
Right, yeah, I'm doing pure trade on that.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to kind of do a spoiler-filled,
Yeah.
a spoiler-free shout-out to it, because I think it's a good book, and I just wanted to recommend it to anybody, even yourself. If you want to check out the 50th issue, you don't have to have read anything else to enjoy it. It's a good book.
If I get the single issue, I know I'll probably go back to getting single issues. And
I think you should.
Throw everything off. I know me.
I love the book, though. I think you should.
Yeah.
And I will keep pumping it because I think it's one of my favorite books. So it's cool.
And I'm enjoying it as well. I solely went to trades, not on quality of work or anything like that. It's because I have so much that I'm reading that Jonah Hex was getting put to the bottom of the pile, and I would end up stockpiling a couple issues. I grab them and read them. I'm like, I'm reading them in trade format already. I might as well just get them in trade format. It's more of a space and storage reasoning than quality or price. Because for me, it was definitely, I had no issue paying what I was paying to get each individual issue. It just, I'm like, you know what? This makes more logical sense for me. I'm reading it this way. I might as well get it this way. And that's why I'm going through with it. But I do agree. It's a great, great title. And I'm looking forward to when that story comes out in trade to read it.
Issue 50 is a tale of vengeance and that's even a hard word to put into place. Jonah Hex is wronged in a way that it hits deep by a number of people. And you can sympathize with one of the people that keeps a certain secret from him. There's a child involved in the whole thing. And you get to really see a deep-rooted story where morality and anger and what is the right way to handle a situation, what will come between lovers, what will come between friendships, and why. It's one of those, when we were talking about Batwoman right now and Renee Montoya, where we were seeing both sides of it. There's moments in this where you will, and I don't want to spoil too much here, you will side with Jonah Hex, the lady in question, and kind of toss between the two who's right and who is wrong. Deep-rooted, heavy emotional issue. It's one of those that will get you feisty, and it's beautifully, brilliantly written. The artwork's fantastic. It's just, ugh. So I'm geeking out over this one. I wanted to shout it out, though. So, Jim, let's go ahead and go on to talk about some Secret Origin.
Hope this craft can withstand this powerful force.
Jim, I wanted to talk about, because it's a series we haven't really talked about at all, Secret Origin, Superman Secret Origin. This was something that I was so waiting for, because I wanted to know, what is his origin now? What is in continuity? What's not? It's surprising for me with this issue. I don't know why it should have been so surprising. This one was so reminiscent of Superman the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And I liked that aspect of it, because that, to me, I can see some people that might be like, well, why are we going so much with the movie? But I'm like, it is an issue of me is Superman, we talk about him being an iconic character. It is so much what at his core are values and events that should still be in place. And so many of those now, we're going to be laying them out in this miniseries, and we can move on from here and just tell Superman stories because we know his background, we know where he came from. It's kind of been laid out. This is a series that be collected, put in a hardcover, and just say this is the origin for right now, and we're going to keep going with that. And I was a fan, like Byrne's Man of Steel, I adored. Birthright, I adored. I like, I'm a fan of when, like, tell us what it is today. What is our continuity today? What are we looking at? I have no problems with that being readjusted. And this will, this is going to be for the foreseeable future, the origin, but there will come a time down the road where they will redo the origin again. I'm enjoying this because it's great to see this writer's take, Jeff Johns' take on who Superman is to him, and setting up the ultimate framework on where this guy's going from here. That's really important to me. The cover, just looking at that, I've loved these covers. It kind of gives you a highlight of who are the characters we're spotlighting. We're obviously spotlighting the Daily Planet years here, seeing him with the CK on the briefcase. Just some great details. It looks very reminiscent of Christopher Reeve. I like Jimmy being portrayed younger here, because these would be early in the years of where he's coming into Superman, whereas in recent appearances for Jimmy Olsen, he's older now. It was nice to see him kind of in that capacity here.
Yeah, I tell you, I really do like when the art team takes the imagery from the movies. I have always liked the Christopher Reeves looking Clark Kent and Superman, and just taking it from the movie. Every time I see some of these scenes, I'm just grinning like a little kid. It's been truly just a very enjoyable stuff, and just I hear his voice with some of the lines, just the dialogue is like, oh gee, well golly, let me help you with that, oh I'm sorry, and I can hear just his voice as I'm reading this stuff, and I can't help but smile. It's just one of those things where that I understand there are complaints about it, that why does it follow the movie, why does it make it look like that, but for me, I'm one of those people that says, keep it up, man. I'm loving it.
I'm a mixed bag when it comes to... I don't feel comics need to be tied to the movies. In the sense that I'm not a big fan of, like, if the movie's popular, like, I don't feel the need that Batman has to adapt to the movie style. I don't mind when they do nods to it. I think it's very cool. We'll talk about this week, the Batman issue. There was an obvious nod to the film there, and I quite liked it. But I don't... Sometimes I feel it's forced. I think that's what I'm not a fan of, where comics feel like they have to be forced into that. It's got to be a storytelling reason. Where writers are like, okay, this was a cool thing they did in the films, and it organically fits into what we're already doing. But there's been, over the years, and I do think it's why comic fans sometimes cringe at that type of thing, is... There has been storytelling over the years where, and it's not just something exclusive to DC, it's been over at Marvel, it's been Independence, where they feel like you have to kind of push in that film thing because the film was so popular, and it's sometimes to the detriment of the story. This is a great example where, for me, personally, I'm echoing your sentiments exactly, Jim. I'm geeking out over it. There are things that were done in the film that I thought were iconic from the comic books, where I think the comics took it from the film and put it on screen. So I do think it doesn't so much come from the film as much as it comes from the original work. And what was cool about the original work, the film did it so well that it translates so well back into the comics because it came from the comics to begin with. So that's where it's a movie that nailed it from the comics, and I think that's why the imagery has lasted and sustained for so long. And it is very cool there. Seeing Superman in that opening page, just looking up at the scope and scale of Metropolis, coming from Smallville and just saying G. This is a guy who can fly, saying G.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. And then we've got the Daily Star, which is the competitor to the Daily Planet, showing Lex Luthor voted the most important man in America. It's just great stuff, because knowing what Luthor is viewed like by the general public, which is something we get right away, Clark isn't totally... And I'm taking this is because of some of Clark's dealings. He isn't totally aware of how Lex Luthor is viewed by the population in general.
Yeah, he doesn't know that much. Well, he knows Lex, but it's one of those things where back in the previous issue, he's like, hey, how you doing? And completely was blown off by Luthor. So it's not, he doesn't know Lex as a kid. They didn't know each other. They didn't grow up. And he probably kind of knows who Luthor is, but not a huge follower of what he's been doing and everything. I like seeing just this innocence come in there, because he has these abilities. Yeah, he has this, but he still is. We're still seeing a bit of the Kansas farm boy here, who's getting used to the big city, who's getting used to things. It's not just a complete act to cover up who Superman is. This is part of who Clark is, and as he learns, he continues and holds on to the act. He continues playing the part later on in life, because it works so well as a cover, and a secret identity for who he becomes.
Now, here's where this really works today, though, because I do think that they take concepts and approaches by him in the film, when he first, with his manners and just, his general, trying to go over the top with being Clark, and just being, he's so excessively nice and things like that. People today are suspect of that. He helps this lady because he bumped into her, takes some responsibility and tries to help her pick up her purse, and she just is so rude. Give me that, and just the way she's looking at him, she's berating him for what he's doing. And go ahead.
Hold on, Sean. He didn't bump into her. She bumped into him. He's stationary.
Oh, that's true.
She's
right.
walking, talking on the phone, and runs into him.
But he's still taking responsibility manners-wise.
Right.
Picking up the person, doing that, and being berated in general, where all he's doing is being kind, is my point. He's just being kind to her, and there's multiple occurrences, because taking it, and there is more of a, I'm not done yet. There is more of a point to this. When he stops by the counter and says good morning to the guy just brushes him off. Gets yelled at by the taxi cab driver. He's not doing anything there. Any of the things that he's doing manners-wise people don't know how to react to that. People don't know today how to react to manners in general. And it's a very true statement on today's society that people, if you're nice, they're automatically suspect of you. Because it says Secret Origin Book 3, mild-mannered reporter. Well, yeah, that's true. People don't, though, nowadays know how to deal with manners. I don't know about you. I just see that throughout the day, that people aren't taught manners anymore. Opening doors for people, just saying a common hello it's not very common nowadays. People don't know how to react to it.
At work, I'll be walking down the hall or heading, to or from the cafeteria or anything like that, and you see somebody like, hey, hi, and if you don't know the person, they look at you and they give you this kind of look, and it does throw people off when you're nice to them. Now, my coworkers who know me, because I work in a very large department of people, so we have all gotten to know each other. That's nothing commonplace, but you say hi to a complete and total stranger, even we all work for the same company and we're all in the same building. There's still some people it throws off, and I kind of do it to be, for my own little personal amusement, just to see people's reaction. So I'm nice to people just for the fun of it. So,
well, then are you really being nice?
Well, not really. No. Not really. Normally I'm doing it for my amusement. But, there is, if someone were to say hi back to me, I'd be nice to them. So there is a little bit of the reality behind it.
The interesting part, when you take a look at Clark on that first page where it's, it gives the title of the issue, the L from the Daily Planet's broken off. There's graffiti all over the place. There's actually, it looks like tape holding together the window on the revolving door, just setting that things are not good at the Daily Planet. There's nobody maintaining anything. It sets a tone before you even get to decide what is really going on for this newspaper. It's just not doing well.
Yeah, well, you got the graffiti of the Gotham Posse. You got the bars on the windows. And it's definitely a lot grimier street, and it's something that I found very interesting with where it's at, but it's not even that, just where the city is at. You think about where Metropolis is current day. It's the clean, it's the wonderful thing where everybody it's the utopia kind of lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And here we're seeing the before. Now, of course, we all know why it's like this. It's because there is no Superman. There is no hope in the city. There is no one that everyone can believe in and just look up to. Even the lady, when that lady who ran into Clark makes a comment when he's saying, well, I was just looking up. It's like, everybody knows Metropolis. There's nothing, you don't look up. There's nothing to see up there. And it's kind of, and I'd like that little notch to look up in the sky, thrown in there.
It is an interesting social commentary on today, though. One of the big problems, and I'll say this for myself, I try to keep up on current events. I try to keep up on what's going on in the news. But one of the things I notice that's consistent is I tend to look on the internet more. And when I look on the internet, I look to reputable websites as far as trying to find out what the news is. Watching a newscast is incredibly depressing to me. There's never any good news. There's nothing that motivates me about watching the news. There's nothing that excites me about it. I try to keep up on what's going on with current events out of responsibility, because I feel just to be a responsible citizen, you need to know what's going on. But there is never, it's all just negative, controversial, angry stories. And you want to see stuff uplifting. It is interesting to see that this world is so dark right now because there isn't the uplifting, motivating story. Metropolis is not the city it could be because there isn't that big story that makes you want to look up to the sky to better yourself, to be that person. That's what Clark is. That's what Superman is. He becomes this motivating force. He doesn't know that he's that yet, though. And that's what's interesting about this interpretation and how it's going through is Clark isn't quite sure how to fit into this world. He's got this guise of Clark Kent, but he isn't quite sure where he's going to go with it. So he's not only awkward on the outside, he's awkward on the inside, which adds a little bit more to his bumbling that we see in this. He doesn't know quite what his goals are yet.
He doesn't know who he's going to be yet. Mm-hmm. He knows he's got to be there. He knows he's got a job to do, but it's not what exactly, he's just seeing the initial part of helping people. Right. He wants to help, he wants to be there, but there's more to it that we're going to see, and he's going to learn as it goes along. I like seeing just, the bumbling Clark, and it's It's not even just to know it's not just a disguise, and this is part of who he is. He's got that uncomfortableness and that unfamiliarity with what he's doing and why he's actually going to be there. Just seeing that grow is one of the big things I've really enjoyed from this series.
Rudy Jones, basically preying on people. It just goes to show that Clark is just naturally helping somebody out. But in this society, and it is true today, people will prey on you. If you look like somebody's going to help somebody out, they are going to look at how can I utilize that to my own benefit? How can I utilize that in such a way where I'm going to gain something from it? And that just read so true to me with this guy taking his lunch. I'm like, okay. And Clark's the guy's like, I didn't eat breakfast. But it's the most important meal of the day, and the elevator closes. Rudy Jones clearly just care less what Clark's going to say. But Clark is constantly, one of the great things about Clark, he's always trying to better the world. And even when he does it, in those one-liners so were Christopher Reeve as Clark Kent. They so totally read like him trying to do that type of thing. But he is like just the classic nice guy that doesn't quite know how to find balance.
Yeah, it was one of those things where, because you talk about Rudy is just complete scum, and he is. And I so want to see Clark. I want to see something happen to this guy, but I don't want, this is Clark. If it was Bruce, I'd say I want to see Batman kick the crud out of the guy, but this is Superman. He's not going to do something like that. And I do wonder if he doesn't realize he's being taken, or if he's just, that nice of a guy that he's not seeing that the guy is blatantly lying about everything. Because it's weird to see this, because this is seeing the bumbling Kansas farm boy who still doesn't know what's going on in the world. And I'm not big city at all. I'm Euclid and Cleveland. These aren't big metropolises, but I can see the scam.
Oh,
I can see
the con. You're much more city than you are. You're not.
Yeah, I'm not a farm boy. So, yeah. But even I tell you, and even farm kids probably can see that this is a scam.
Oh no! What I'm saying though is the way you were presenting that. I'm like sitting here, like, what are you talking about, dude? You grew up in Euclid, which is a pretty major suburb compared to. So, Jim's like, yeah, I'm very much so. My parents and I've got my little tumbleweed in the backyard.
Hold on, I didn't say.
I'm teasing you. Relax.
Okay, because I don't want people thinking I'm saying like
the way you said
I do
that
make the joke that Cleveland's like New York, but it's nowhere near.
No,
it's nowhere near Metropolis. But it is something that I do like. When I
break out some Mellencamp and be sitting here talking about how you were born in a small town. I'm like, no, you weren't.
I was born in a small town. Okay.
I just thought it was funny the way you were presenting it. I'm like laughing. I'm like, what is he justifying here? I knew where you grew up.
But we really don't. We didn't really grow up in a big metropolis. Let's be honest.
No, but Cleveland was close enough that we're not. It's not alien. My wife grew up in Geneva, which is more of farm country. There is a different world. It's where we are in relation. Cleveland's on our border. It was my point.
Yeah, I know, but
I was just laughing at the way you were presenting it. I understand your point, and there is a point there. We were not entrenched in the big city growing up, but we did. Like as kids, we went down to the Halley building for Christmas. I mean, you had to have done all that, Higbee's and all that stuff for Christmas shopping, and we were a lot more into. You're right. It's not New York, but it is still big city. As far as we were, I mean, you had to have had that experience as a kid. Everybody did that.
Right.
We did go down and do a lot of big city things during the holidays and, like you would commonly see in this book, which I think that's kind of the interesting thing. And I can relate to some of these things, like when Clark's looking up like that, we did those types of things, but not as adults. We did them as kids. Clark is seeing this as an adult for the first time, which his awe is a lot different than ours would have been. Because of time framing. It's interesting. No, the point that you made up is interesting because our experiences are different than Clark's even. Because Clark is seeing this stuff for the first time, whereas we didn't as kids. So I was teasing you.
Yeah, I know. I'm just,
I do think it's an interesting point to bring in there, though, where Clark's different than us, for example. Because he is seeing that at a very different time. And there might be some of our listening audience that can relate to Clark even deeper level than that. And you're right, Euclid certainly is different than that. But I thought it was our experiences are a lot closer to the city experiences than Clark's would have been, because our exposure was there. He didn't have the exposure at all, which this man who can fly and all the things that he's done up until this point, this is so very different to him to see that. Even with his time with the Legion and the stuff that he did as Superboy with the Legion, it's different than seeing it in his world like he does now, which is that was something that I thought felt very real and was very cool. This series could not have been long enough for me. Like, they could have kept going and gotten more fine into the details of his childhood and growing up and what that was like. Like, this is a 6-issue mini. I would have read 12. I would have read 2 years of this.
Heck, I would have 12 monthly. Let's just make this a monthly series and really delve into
keep it going
what he's like as a kid.
Right. and take it all the way up to whenever he gets to the point where he goes to Metropolis. I would have kept reading this. It's and that's not a knock on it. It's fabulous. They couldn't tell me enough of I want to know all the geeky little details of his life, and that's interesting.
Yeah, I want to see Clark go to his prom. I want to see just the him as a kid, and that's and I'm we're both geeking out on this what we're getting, but that is something that I would still like to see. I still would like to see a Superboy series that's Clark as a kid.
That's why we like Smallville, though.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the things we all keep saying we want to see him in the cape and tights on Smallville. But I think and why I've always, when we've had those discussions, been on the side of, well, but, even though I'm saying that, but I like this exploration of the years that we don't normally get to see from him. The years that kind of go through quickly. What was childhood like? What was it like before he put on the cape? What was that life like for Clark? More than just the Superboy years, what was it like to be Clark Kent growing up in Smallville? What was that area like? And that's the stuff that I geek out about in that show. And I want to see the cape and types like everybody else. I think we're at that point in the series where we could. But I think that does apply here with our discussion that, like, you can't give us enough of this. It's because I want to see more of those years. This is great. I would love to see, Superman's Secret Origins, the Lost Pages, or something like that. Tell me, give me more. I'll take more. I'll buy
the Lost Years,
Secret Origin 2, They did, Kurt Busiek did a Spider-Man series, Untold Tales of Spider-Man, that you could plug in between issues of Spider-Man that told stories. You could do, Untold Tales of Superman's Secret Origin, and I would be very happy with that. Plug it in between panels and frames, fill in some of the blanks. I would love that. It's a great, Kurt Busiek series was great. I loved that one. It was when Marvel experimented with these 99-cent books, and that was one of them, and it was just brilliant every month. But back to this anyway. One thing I really like about Gary Frank being the artist on this, he was the artist when the Daily Planet bullpen was brought back into current day, where we got to see all of these people back in. So to have him doing the younger versions of these characters, they feel like, for us, visually, the younger versions of the characters we're currently seeing in the books, because he was part of putting them on the page the first time through when we saw them, when Jeff Johns took over. So it's great to see, these characters working, even though, the Daily Planet's falling apart clearly from the look of the whole place and is very low tech at this point in time. Just seeing, Lombard and all these guys, Cat Grant in the younger years, but still seeing that she looks like the Cat Grant that we're seeing today in Supergirl so prominently.
And she's still the same cat that she's always been.
Steve just helped Lois Lane out in the most recent issue, and it's the same guy, but it's clear that some years have taken some toll on him, and that's great. I love these whole bits of the whole thing. Seeing Jimmy for the first time, I want to know, where is Jimmy right now in the main book? But looking at this right now, just to see him back, I love Jimmy Olsen. I'm a huge Jimmy Olsen fan. And to see this character, he's not getting paid right now. I don't know about you.
This is his unpaid internship, and I like to see when he brings in.
Did you do internships of any sort?
No, I didn't have to.
Yeah, because I had to do student teaching, and that's basically what this is. Where you don't get paid at that point, but there is something about being that person trying to fit in Because you do, when you're doing student teaching, you want to fit in, you want the staff to like you because those lead to recommendations and hopefully job placement and things like that. I can relate to Jimmy here when I'm looking at him. I'm like, okay, yeah, you're trying to do little extra things to get noticed and to get remembered. And, those are things that you do when you're in those positions. And I was just so totally geeking out at him when he was doing this. And how Clark immediately connects with him because Jimmy's obviously feeling a little awkward, not a place like he is. And that's something that came through in this moment.
And they all keep getting his name wrong, except, of course, Clark. Because, Clark, first time meeting the kid says, he's correcting them, saying, my name's not Jason. He's like, it's Jimmy. Clark is listening to the kid, and Clark hears and is like, oh, hi, Jimmy, I'm Clark Kent. And I thought that was just a nice way to show these two coming in, their first meeting. It's very appropriate and fitting that the Clark, the nice guy, would take the time to listen to the kid's name, and not only listen and hear the name, but remember it. And that's, because everybody else looks down at Jimmy. He's a nothing to them. Well, not to Clark. Everybody is a somebody.
That one of the things that's been always great about Superman, and we've talked about this on multiple episodes, is the fact that when Clark talks to somebody, and when Superman talks to somebody, he makes you feel like you're the most important person in the world in those moments. And that's something that comes through here. We get to see that in Clark Kent mode. It's not something that's an act. It's something that's a part of him at his core of who he is. It's the way he was raised. It's the manners that we go back to. It's when you're talking to somebody and they're talking to you, actually listen. That's something that's lost today. We jump around so much in this day and age of quick, texting and things like that. And I'm not knocking those things, but I'm saying we get so used to just quick little shout-outs that sometimes we forget how to converse and to really listen to people. And I think it is something I'm not saying everybody who texts does that. I'm obviously, if we're doing a podcast, I'm super into text. I mean, super into technology in general. But I do think it's something that we all as a society need to be aware of, that with technology and with the fact that we aren't doing as much face-to-face as we used to, and there isn't as much need as to hearing the voice as we've done in the past, that we've got to keep in mind there's a powerful message here in Superman as far as how to react to people in general and what good, solid communication is like. And I think it's something that we don't want to become a lost art. That it's a powerful message of Superman. I don't know. I geeked out reading this because I was like, wow, this is it's classic but contemporary at the same time, and that makes for a powerful story. Especially as we jump into Lois Lane. I love seeing Lois Lane.
Oh my God! And the fact that it's, of course, Lois is the only one willing to throw down with the Luthors and say the truth about Lex, and not only does it get them in trouble, it's really messing over the paper, and the paper's probably is going to be filing with the bankruptcy, and all these problems they're getting is political pressure and just everything that comes from Luthor. She's trying to expose Luthor for who he is, and there's consequences to it. When you throw down with the most powerful man in the city, guess what? He's going to hate you back, and we've seen that Luthor doesn't play exactly fair all the time. He will hit you below the belt. He goes where it hurts the most, and I love seeing this banter, this rage going back and forth between the two of them, especially when Lois throws Perry's words back at him about how Luthor played Monopoly with Metropolis and won. He doesn't get the right though to pass go and collect his $200. I love that she threw that quote back, and he's like, I hate when you quote me, when you throw my quotes back at me. That was just a cool. You see, there's a it's not your typical boss reporter editor reporter relationship. There is mutual respect there, and when you have that respect, sometimes you're able to yell and scream and just unleash your pure emotions at each other.
I'm surprised you glossed over the fact of what the Daily Planet stands for.
Well,
that's typically your line.
Oh God,
Truth,
come on, that was awesome.
In the American way. Yeah, you used to have that hanging on your wall.
Yeah, truth, justice, and the American way. I did. There's a lot of parts in this thing where I did a hoorah and I cheered out loud. That, of course, was one of them. But and I liked his comeback. The Repo Man took it along with our press passes. It was just it was a nice thing there within that showing what Luthor's doing to them just because they're writing articles against him.
And it's funny how code and what they really believe in as reporters on this paper and who they are integrity-wise, this is a very, very good companion piece to current issues of Action Comics, what's going on with Lois right now and the Chief and how they're handling things. There's something about the two of them and their relationship that we're seeing here, that we're seeing this is at the core who they've been to each other. We're seeing that now in the current continuity as well. I love that this reads very well right now and helps us to understand that relationship that's currently happening in the current title. And there was something, that consistency and that feel and tone was something that I thought this issue really captured. Now, we got the Jimmy coming back in. Do you want ice cream? What? No, I said coffee, kid. 2 sugars. And just something where the two of them, the relationship with Jimmy and the abuse that Jimmy went through as an intern, but then to know that deep down, Perry has always had a strong heart for Jimmy. You don't always see it with him. That was something that was classic within the films and something classic in the comics. But there really is a deep-rooted... Perry is more in tune with this kid than I think anyone realizes. Because he's also, in the current comic book right now, looking for him. Yeah. So there is a part of him at his core that really cares for this kid that you don't always see on the pages.
Now, we talk about just references from the movie with Lois Lane getting the orange juice. I thought that was a cool thing because she kept drinking the orange juice and she kept telling Clark how, oh, you got to have your vitamin C. And there was just a whole little bit, the fact that Lois, got an orange juice where everybody else got their coffees. I thought that was kind of a nice little tie to it.
And the reason why Clark was hired is that he's replacing a reporter who went to the currently
Daily Star,
the dominant paper over there, which I love that the Daily Star was brought in because that was the paper originally from like in the Earth 2 and the Golden Age concept of Superman, that paper is something that is still around in the DC universe. I'm glad that when all this kind of came back together, that both of those continuities, newspapers are still in the DC universe. Because it would make sense that there would be, we grew up with the Plain Dealer and the Cleveland Press. So it is common in larger cities that you'll have more than one newspaper running and competing for the top stories and to be the one. And Clark using the word swell.
Yeah.
who uses that word? It's.
I use swell still, and I use groovy.
When do you use swell?
I use it at work. It's hysterical. Really? Yeah. You get reactions from people. Same thing with groovy.
Well, groovy I've heard you use before, but I've never heard you use swell.
I've used swell before.
Have you?
Yeah.
Wow. That's not a common part of your speech.
No, it's not. It's not a regular thing. I do throw it out every so often, though.
Right. It is something.
Sometimes you got to shake it up a little.
Do you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And whatnot.
Exactly.
Throw that in. Do you throw in swell in weird places like you throw in whatnot?
No. I think I use swell appropriately, and hey, you know what? In my head, I'm using whatnot appropriately.
But we know what goes on in your head. It's Lois is volunteering with Clark. I loved that it felt like she had an ulterior motive.
And you knew right away that she was doing it, and he's like, you're volunteering. Oh, yeah, what can I say, Chief? It's you. You bring it out in me. I'm going to be a nice guy like you want me to be.
I love the way Lois is drawn here because there's a sexiness that's not overdone. It's not overstated. But part of the sexiness is the power of her. I think that's important. I really applaud how Gary Frank handled her because you don't want her to have the whole bikini model look about her. Yet you want to see that there is something that's physically appealing about her. There's that aspect of it. But a lot of her power comes from her internal strength as well. So there's something about her where you can kind of see that she's a package deal, if I'm making sense there.
Oh, yeah.
And I really appreciated that handling of her. You don't need to go too over-the-top crazy with how you draw her. You need to find a balance where you can believe that she looks, that you can see the sexiness about her, but that it comes from her integrity, her power, something about who she is. It's that whole package there. And
the personal whatnot of her.
Me and my big mouth.
See, once again, appropriate usage of whatnot.
Yeah, that's right. I love that I can edit the show. This is one of those episodes where I'd love to just take you out of it. But seeing, though, that Lois with the flowers, I don't like flowers. I hate flowers. This thing from John, because Lois is very much an independent woman who doesn't want anything that would make her seem like girly, if that's the right term for it. And that's, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having that aspect of her, but she sometimes tries too hard.
Not to be that. Yeah.
Like a guy who tries too hard to be macho.
Yeah.
You know, and to throw that out there where they go over the top to the point where it's almost kind of like you're groaning at it. She's got that going on. And I like that about her. It's that's something that was handled very well in this.
And I tell you, I did chuckle with the whole complete clutter on the desk, and she's throwing stuff. Where's it at? Where's it? Tosses, hands Clark one of her bras, and then finds her wig and sunglasses. Oh, here they are. That is another thing that I like seeing. That was something that was really in the movie, and I don't know if it was classic Lois Lane that she was this way, but it is a part of her that, we're seeing it in Smallville with the Lois there. We're seeing it here. This is just across the board something I like about Lois, that it's kind of every time you see it, you're like, yeah, all right, cool. Kind of get that little grin.
Yeah, and that is kind of cool. There is, that's where I said there is a sexiness there, and it does work. That is a great moment where you see that. Now, they go off on this little mission to kind of break into Luther's place, and I love how before they do that, they have another run-in with Rudy, and, she basically tries to point out to Clark, hey, just so you know, there's a lot of Rudy Joneses everywhere in Metropolis. This is kind of the norm here.
Yeah, Clark gets taken for a 20, and that's all the money he has on him.
Right.
I'm just like, oh, man, Clark. He's like, yeah, I don't have money, and I don't know how I'm going to take the bus. She's like, well, here, let me help you out. I have a 20. And it was one of those things. I saw it. I did smile because it is just that, thing. And I'm like, part of me does want to know, is Clark really getting taken? Or does he, know what's going on, and he's just trying to be a positive influence, figuring, okay, if I can do something positive, maybe I can help out, this person who's, less moral character.
I think both. Or I think some of that develops over time, too, with him. I don't know if there's a simple answer to that. I don't know that we're at a point right now where Clark completely has a whole grasp of human nature because of his exposure with his parents and things like that. But I do think this is something where he does develop it over time. And yet, like you said, there is that part of him that would still try anyway because he's trying to send a message. So, and I think that's the point you were getting at there, and I agree. It's a little bit of A, a little bit of B. I think right now it's a little bit more of one than the other. I do think it's more balanced today than before. But,
yeah, definitely today he gives people the opportunity to do the right thing.
Right.
Whereas now I don't know if he's given the guy the opportunity to do the right thing, if he's getting taken by the con artist, or if, he's like, well, let me just see if this works. I don't know yet. I don't know where he's at. And that's one of the things where that would be told in an inner dialogue balloon, which is something they're not doing a lot of in the Secret Origins, which is actually kind of nice. We're only getting what's out there, what's being laid out. Now, I do like inner dialogue balloon for him would be saying whether he knows exactly if this guy's a con artist. But I don't know. It has a cinematography type feel to it when we don't get that. Because a lot of the movies,
totally is.
They shy away from the inner dialogue balloons.
Yeah, he totally is a con artist. Rudy?
Oh, Rudy's a con artist. I mean, Clark. We would find out from Clark if he is being taken by the con artist with the inner dialogue balloon. That's what I mean.
Yeah. Oh, and that is interesting to see. I think he's being taken here. I do. I don't think he's focused on that. I think he's looking at a guy in trouble. Let me help him out and just be done with that. I do think he's being taken. Maybe a little bit he might be thinking that. I don't think we're at that point yet. Now, today, if we were reading it in current continuity, if this was in a current issue of Action Comics, I would say I think Clark knew. But at this point, I would say no. I would say he's being taken. Just because he's not there yet. His view of the world. Probably. The whole bit with Lois and Clark when they break into the place, and I like this storytelling with the way the planet is portrayed at this point in time, because there is a real genuine motivation why Lois is like, okay, there's an advantage here of me to train this guy to work with me to better my own position. I do think she likes the idea of the Lois and Clark team because it is something that's good for her to have somebody else as a wingman to kind of guide things her way. That motivation makes sense here. Like, here's somebody I can mold who's very green, who, we've got to compete with the Daily Star. The Daily Planet's falling apart. We need these big stories to get me in here is huge at the moment.
Yeah.
It does fit. I also love that she catches the bad suit, the glasses that overtake your face. I've looked into Luther's eyes. I've seen the twisted mind behind them. But yours, you want to be underestimated, don't you? And she catches on to something there that I think is... And she has no idea how far that goes.
Yeah, this is beyond just, and I did like that she's already getting the line of, and she's already starting to see what is the secret identity without even realizing that she's seeing it. It's, and you just talked about that one line. She's like, "Trust me, Smallville, Bernstein and Woodward are going to have to move over. Here comes Lois and Clark." I love that again, just the reference of calling him Smallville. Little stuff like that, but just seeing the reporter that is Lois Lane. Right now we've seen the firecracker Lois Lane, who's hard hitting, going after the story at any means necessary, any cost, what she's got to do. But we are seeing an intelligent investigative reporter in one page, and it's just a cool thing to see the nod to what makes Lois such a cool person. She's got the hard charging firecracker. We got a little bit of sexiness, and we also got a really good reporter. So it's a plus.
And needing the tag team partner to kind of get her inside there was great. Yeah. But then to see Metallo, the early origins of Metallo here, and how that framework kind of plays into what we originally saw in the first movie with the whole... Because the second I saw the helicopter being lifted up by that, I'm like, oh my gosh, they really are going this far with this. Where, Lois is caught, they recognize that she's there and that, she's going to do a smear campaign, basically, because not a smear campaign as far as she's going to report the truth, which they don't really want her to do. They want to get only the positive information out. And we get that great moment where she falls, and I'm like, wow. Not only is she falling, but she's falling with the helicopter following her. And we get to see Clark have to go through and do the sequence that we saw in the film, which to me, the page where he goes into that alley and we get to see him open up his shirt, iconic, sharp, fresh. It ain't broke.
Don't fix. Oh yeah,
don't fix it, because it can still look cool when we see a brand new artist, a brand new take on it. Yes, it looks straight like it's out of the movie, but who doesn't? My toes curl. I geek out whenever I see that little moment. It is something where you can still tell the story new, set it today, but still put in those moments. And that's the difference. This is taking elements from the movie, sure, which came from the comics originally anyway, but it's making it more today. It's putting in issues that we would face today, bringing in things like Metallo, bringing in what's going on with the planet. It's the same storytelling, but today. And wow, look up in the sky, he catches her, and they have that moment. I love the reflection on the window, too, by the way, where you see them in the background with the mirrored reflection. Those little details, tiny details, I just thought were fantastic.
Oh, yeah, dude. I tell you, this for me, one, I liked when as he's running into the alley, you hear him say, "All right, Clark, don't think about how tight it is." I thought that made me this chuckle, because he's still just the guy who's not 100% comfortable with running around in his underwear. Then you get to the moment he opens up the shirt, immediately the music starts kicking in my head. I start hearing the dum da dum da 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 dum da dum. I'm like, yes. I'm pumping my fists in the air, and when he catches her, I was just hooping and hollering. Of course, I did want the line from the movie. I still love that line. "I got you, miss. You've got me. Who's got you?" I still laugh at that scene. I love it. I understand why they couldn't do that stuff in the comic, probably because it's copywritten material and whatnot, so you kind of can't steal the entire movie and throw it into a comic book. But it did have those moments that I loved, where he sits there and he catches the helicopter, and he's like, "Yeah, my dad and I used to, play catch." "You play catch with helicopters?" No, baseball." And I'd like to see that, that kid, a little bit of innocence, but still doing these superhuman things that just made him Superman. And you talked about the reflection and just the look, that high kind of moment between the two of them. I was just like, I geeked out multiple times. Every single time I flip through these pages, I hoop and holler and I cheer. And this is why I still like, seeing origin stories of Superman. I still enjoy seeing stuff like this, so I can see these moments.
I didn't want it to be line. See, like when you were saying I wanted that line from the movie, I think one of the strengths of this is that it wasn't there. I don't think it was so much an issue of could they put it there because of movie rights and things like that. They threw in enough lines from the movie here to show that they could throw in as many as they wanted to. But I think there comes a point where I like nods to the film. I like that they pull moments that feel like they're from the film. But I also want parts where I'm like, okay, take the story farther, take it in a different direction, make it a little bit more today. I didn't want them to do that. This was the balance that they have in this issue. I think that's where it worked. It's nods thematically to what worked in the film, but then kind of adjusting it and making some changes so it feels a little bit more today too. I applaud the creative team for a balance there. That line, "You got me, who's got you," I don't know that I love that in the film, and you are so in sync about how cool that was in the movie. I wouldn't have wanted it here because this felt not as slapstick, and that worked in the original film. It wouldn't have worked here. And that's to me where I'm like, oh no, I'm glad that wasn't there because they've done some humor moments here, but we don't want to go too far with it. It's not today's storytelling to do that. It worked in the 70s. It doesn't work here.
And I know. And, it's, I'm not arguing with anything you're saying. But it's just, there's something about, there's a couple lines from the movie that I really do want to see. I really did want to see in the comic. I could even give away with not having the "I've got you, who's got you," but the one line about the I hope this doesn't take you off flying. Statistically, it is the safest form of travel. That is another classic Superman type line that I would like to see somehow worked into the comic.
I don't want to see it with Superman because here's the reason why. There's a little bit more of a distinction between him as Superman here. There's a difference between him and Clark. You start throwing out those lines, this Lois is a little bit sharper than the one that we saw in the film. She's already caught on that he's hiding something with those glasses. And to me, to throw those lines in too much, he sounds too much like Clark. So no, I don't want that here because I don't think it fits this story. I love that line too, and I'm with you. So like when you're saying those lines, you're throwing them out, I'm like, yeah, that was cool in the movie. I'm totally with him on that. Amen. I wouldn't want to see that here because that's a Clark line being done by Superman. And right now, I think we really need to see that there is a little bit of a distinction between the duality between the two because this Lois is really sharp. She's caught on to something early on that I think is an important point. So I think the way that they handled this was brilliant. There was nothing missing from this for me. I think they did just enough of a nod to it, and it felt new at the same time, and that was important to me.
Yeah, and there's definitely is enough of a nod that I'm loving this book. So any comments I make about stuff I'd like to see and I wish was in there isn't taking away anything I've read. Because in what you're saying, I agree with you. This Lois, would pick up that kind of stuff. Maybe even have Clark, say some of those lines. Now I don't know, but it's still it just I don't know. It's just something that I would like to see. It's nothing negative on what I'm seeing, but there are some stuff that it's like the whole Batman thing with criminals are a cowardly lot. I always want to see that whenever they talk about the origin and why Batman becomes Batman.
Criminals are a superstitious and cowardly lot?
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I meant.
Sorry.
Let me tell you, you can't see me right now, but I'm telling you, you're number one.
I like having you at your house. That means no happy dances.
Well, I'm doing happy dances. I'm doing them. You just can't see them.
I know. That's what I'm saying. That works for me. This next segment right here is, again, talking about where it starts to go in a little bit of a direction. What are you wearing? Is this making you fly? Who are you? It's not important. What else can you do? Can you help me? I need help. Johnny, don't touch him. The fear of this new being. Everybody stand clear. Don't move, buddy. We need to ask you some questions. There's parts of this where it's thematically like the film, but there's other parts where it's a little bit more today. The suspicion that people have of, the mother with the son, I thought was just brilliant because it's so much today. That is exactly what it would be like. And then him flying away and hearing still what they're saying. You see what he was wearing. He's a miracle. Come back. What does he want? What does he want? That is a very loaded question. Because that's, again, suspicion. Does he want to help us? Is there some other purpose? Why is he here? What is he? What is he is another loaded question. As far as, is there something to worry about? Do we need to question it? Are there more like him? Every bit of that I thought was very today.
Oh, yeah, big time. And this Metropolis they live by trying to win the Luthor Lotto. It's not they're not trying to and standing up for themselves. They want to get the hand-me-outs. They want to get, somebody always is giving you something for a reason. Here is somebody who is helping just to help. No ulterior motives, no nothing, and no one, you really don't see that in anybody, and it's not even just this in Metropolis. In regular society, we look at, somebody who does something good, even, like these heroes of the day and stuff like that. There's always that initial report of the guy saying, hey, or the girl saying, look at this great thing this person did. And behind the scenes, they're trying to dig up dirt on them. Because, as much as we want to have a hero, we love seeing the fall of the hero even more. And that's better ratings. That's better just thing. And it's no one does anything just to be nice. There's got to be an ulterior motive. And just seeing Clark deal with that is a wonderful, just again, insight into who he is and where he's coming from.
The title for Parasites for next issue is really interesting because Clark now has let the cat out of the bag. And what Dad told him, just saying, hey, once you do this, once you go public, you can't go back because, people now know you're there. And media's all over him now that he's done this. They know he's there. They're going to put that out there. And he's realized, he said, I think I've just made a horrible mistake. Well, that is something where he's going to have to deal with that. What is his world going to be like now that he has let the cat out of the bag? What is that going to be like? I am so excited for this because Parasites, I think it's going to be some villains, but I think it's also going to be how people are reacting to him and what they want from him. I'll be curious to see how the other newspaper reacts to him.
Well, what's going to happen is, here's my guess.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get of course, the Daily Planet will get the exclusive, and that'll start saving the planet. So the Star, which is under control by Luthor, is going to start running the the muckraking campaigns and try and knock him down. I see it just definitely going to be the two papers against each other. One's pro Superman, the other one's con. And it's going to be kind of a cool looking battle to see how it goes down. Well, we know how it's going to end in the end, but it's going to be neat to see this, kind of get played out. And one of the things it's funny because I was thinking about just this whole thing where he's like the final scene where he's saying, I think I've made a mistake. It really emphasized, with Smallville, how the red and blue blur at first, where he wasn't letting people see him and he was running around helping people and got people used to the fact that there's somebody out there who's going to do good. And even that, Clark Kent was still getting some, negative press and getting some negative opinions of him.
And that is something that's, I think, a little bit more in line with our society. That is how our society reacts. We react to kindness with suspicion. And I love that about this because I do think that people don't know how to deal with somebody who's truly doing something selfless, which is what Clark's doing.
Yeah.
I love this. I mean, this is a great miniseries. It's everything that I thought it was going to be right out of the starting gate. The first two issues had that same feel to it. And I liked the nods to the movie. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not trying to say that I don't like the nods to the movie. Just the opposite. I geek out at them. I think that what has worked for me so much of this is balance, because I think you need to do some of that while at the same time giving us something that feels more current, more today. The films are classics. They still work for me today to watch them. But on the other hand, I think if they re-released and they redid the film, kind of like what they did with Psycho, where they redid the movie, shot by shot and things like that, I don't know that I would not want a Superman movie that redoes the origin the way, and the first film the way that it was done. You need to do that story differently now for today's audience. They can rent the original or buy the original to get that. Donner did it and did it well and put his stamp on it. Let's be done with that. I think that's part of what Hurt Returns is. It tried to take place in that world, which doesn't necessarily work for today's audience.
Well, I don't think I think probably what hurt it more, and I agree with you. There was some problem with the fact that, I think I
loved Returns. Now,
yeah, I think one of the things that everyone, and this is the common complaint I'm hearing from people, is the fact that he didn't fight anybody. He didn't really. They wanted a super battle. They wanted to see Superman throwing down. Now, granted, he picks up that big, huge chunk of kryptonite, and you do see some action sequences with him catching the plane, but the They wanted to see Superman beat up like, super robots or take on, some mega powered villain and just
Superman
have
the movie, what was his big battle?
Right. He really didn't have a big battle.
So that's what I'm saying. I mean, it was a different type of film that worked at the time. That's my point.
Right.
If you look at Superman the movie, Superman Returns, they are from the same type of film style, the same type of world, and I think that it's if you're going to reboot the series, it's got to be a little different than what it was back in the day. I think that film, and that I'm not knocking the original film because I think that's been put out on Blu-ray right now. I think that film can be watched by today's audiences and they'll love it and enjoy it as a classic film. But for example, you wouldn't make Casablanca the way you did in black and white in the past today. If you did a Casablanca style film, it would be done with contemporary film styles, contemporary film techniques, contemporary storytelling. It would be a different kind of film if you made it today. Yet people can still watch and appreciate it for what it is, and as a classic movie. I think Donner's films get that today, but to make a sequel to Donner's movies now, that didn't work. And I think that's part of what happened with Returns is it worked for us who had the nostalgia, and I don't think that's even true across the board. But I liked it. I'm not going to.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not backpedaling saying I didn't. I did. I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun at that movie. I saw it twice in the theater. I saw it, once in the regular movie theater. I couldn't wait to see it in 3D at the IMAX 3D. I really enjoyed it. I own it. It is something where I was glad I saw it. I will say this about it. To look at it now, do I rewatch that the way I watch a Batman Begins, Superman the movie, Superman 2, a Dark Knight Returns? No. I have not watched that movie in ages. I haven't had the massive urge to. So that's telling, I think, as far as longevity and how that one lasts, because I guess I'm ready to see a more today Superman film.
Yeah, see, I've seen scenes. I've watched scenes of that before. Mm-hmm. Since seeing the movie, because I'll pop it in just to see a couple of the scenes, and it's some of the action sequences. I still like that whole plane sequence, and I do watch that, and I watch it right through up to the point where he throws out the line and then flies off and leaves. So I'll watch that, and like the ending with the kid. I don't know. There's some stuff that I will, but I do agree with you that it's people wanted something different from Superman.
I don't think it means and I know it doesn't mean darker Superman. And I cringe every time I hear that. That's when I say contemporary. Contemporary doesn't mean darker. Contemporary means you talked about it with like a big battle today, special effects, things like that. I don't know that battle necessarily would have fixed the film. If you put a big, huge battle in it, I think you would still have the same problems. I think that it really needed to be like. Secret Origin is a great example of how you can use some of those sensibilities from the 70s film, but not go too far with it and make it work. I think Secret Origin works much better than Returns did.
Well, and it's funny because we're seeing in Secret Origins, there have not been any major battles. Right. There's not been any major, action sequences, really. It's been telling the story of, Clark. And we're 3 issues into it already. I'm enjoying it. I'm loving it. I'm gushing about it. But I really haven't had the big action fight sequences or anything like that. And to be honest, I don't know if we're really going to see that. It's going to be interesting to see what happens now that Superman is on the scene.
We've got 3 more issues. I'm sure we're going to have to see a big something with him and Luthor, because it's being too broadcast in this. I think we're going to at least see his first big throwdown with Luthor. I'm thinking Metallo is going to play into this. I don't think Metallo's a throwaway.
No.
It's
going to be the introduction of Kryptonite.
Sure, and that's going to be, I think, where it's interesting. I don't know. I love the series. I think it's this has been a really fun one. I was looking forward to it. God, I was hoping it would pay off like this, and it has. I'm not surprised that it did, but I was surprised with this issue over how many nods there were to the original film and how it worked, because that would not have been necessarily the route I would have gone, and they really worked it out. And I think it's a better book for it with the balance that they put in.
Definitely.
So, because I do think you need something for the newer fans as well as the older fans, and trying to find that balance is very difficult. So, good stuff.
Reaching melting point. Not sure we can make it.
Our sponsors for this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, you can pre-order Superman Secret Origin number 5 of 6, regularly $3.99, 40% off, only $2.39. JLA Avengers, regularly $19.99 over at InStockTrades.com, 47% off, only $10.59 for that 208-page monster that we're going to be tackling in January with Kent Hare. InStockTrades.com for all your trade paperback and hardcover needs. DCBService.com for all your pre-order needs. Jim, our next episode, we are going to be joined by Daryl Taylor, as we're going to be discussing the Batman books. We're going to be discussing Batman, Red Robin, kind of a general discussion about the whole Bat universe right now and how we're feeling about that. We're going to chat in depth about the news about Bruce Wayne coming back and how we feel about Dick Grayson and Damian and where we see all that going. And a lot of stuff's happened. There's been a lot of Batman happenings since Batman Reborn's begin. So we're just going to kind of do an in-depth, focused, targeted look at Batman Reborn, which is kind of fun. So that's the big focus is going to be on Red Robin and the regular Batman book. So kind of fun to chat about those books. I'm really excited to have him join us for that. And we will see you next week.
Bye.